Moment of prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here. We thank you that we got to experience what we did yesterday. The heavens declare, the world declares your glory when we see it. And we recognize that, and we thank you for who you are. And we ask you to help us to make good decisions in everything that we do here. In your name, amen.
Well, you should have all had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting and any additions, corrections, or
We were just talking, I never got a
I never
copy.
got an email with the minutes from the last meeting.
Angie would have probably sent those pretty quick after the last meeting because it didn't take
My
long.
emails go clear back to March 11th, and there's nothing there.
Some of them take a bit on.
Hold on.
pass them around.
That's, Dennis got his and nobody else did. Wait a minute, the eclipse called something. Yeah.
See, my minutes are.
They would.
Bree will get to them and send them here in a second. Oh. Dennis, he got his.
I don't imagine there's more than 300 words there.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know, because they get sent.
I don't,
It's kind of weird.
I got.
Dennis got them, nobody else?
I had nothing to
Well,
hold.
I will motion to approve.
Thank you.
Shannon just,
Second.
Y'all had a chance to read it? Moved and seconded to approve as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Was it Fred and Bob?
Me and Fred.
Oh, Corey and Fred? Yeah. Oh, you need to sign that. Where did it come to go? Oh. See ya. Next is approval of the hospital.
Okay. You should have all received a letter from the hospital by way of informing us of the payment of the debt retirement. Any comments or questions? I want to thank Corey and Steve for their work by way of setting the tone and the pattern for us. Appreciate your work. It did pay off.
I guess I'll say thank you to the hospital for stepping up on this. I guess sort of the highlight of all of this, and I know there's a couple of us here that were involved. It wasn't just me, but basically as we had a 0.2% income tax that was always supposed to go to the hospital bond, and then they were supposed to pay the difference. Well, over 30 years, that 0.2% of everybody's wages keeps going up, 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 up. And so whereas originally we were only paying 23%, we were at almost 100% now. And so we brought this to the hospital's attention and said, hey, I think this is not the way we planned it. And to their credit, they agreed and stepped up. And so the agreement is that they're going to pay the bond off early. I think it's 4 years early. It's going to end up saving us about $10 million to kind of correct this issue. So I'm glad that we could be a community partner in that. Everybody can work together. That also means that that 0.2%, the last time that we'll need it is in 2028. So at that point, it'll fall off. If a future council wants to reestablish it for some other purpose, that's their prerogative. But as of right now, that'll pull that 0.2% off. 2028 will be the end.
And also free up the money off of the county's books, and it'll free up the money off the hospital's obligation to continue to expand and grow as they have been. So it's a win for everybody.
And I guess I should mention that 0.2% doesn't just go to the county. That is, the cities were paying this, the townships were paying this, all the municipalities were getting saddled with this. That was getting disproportionate. So this is a, council and Steve really, Steve Bailey and the commissioners really spearheaded this for the benefit of all the municipalities, not just the council. So thank you to everybody involved.
Well, I don't want to pat my own back, but I, kind of started it about a year and a half ago, asking the board to come in and review it and explain, my purpose. And then, then we had Adam Miller come in and resulted in getting an attorney to help us resolve it. Partnered beautifully with the hospital. We're all winners.
Steve, did you want to address the letter that?
That's up to you guys. I just wanted to make sure we got what you wanted into your minutes, into your record. That letter from the hospital, their 5-year plan from the hospital was presented to the commissioners. I'd be happy to represent that if that helps you get it into your minutes, but if you don't need that, I'm happy to sit right here and be quiet.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. It's
Yeah, let's put it in the minutes.
As you're aware, a few meetings ago, the hospital came to the commissioners and presented their strategic plan, their 5-year strategic plan. Basically, it had 9 points to that strategic plan, including community outreach, and I know they've begun to have on an ongoing basis continue to reach out, especially the Amish community. But part of that was community outreach. Another bullet point was they're expanding their obstetrics program, their OB program, and continuing to offer that. I know that's at a time when a lot of hospitals are pulling back from those services. So they're expanding that and continuing to offer that. Their strategy is to be an employer of choice, and we all want that for our businesses. But they work on that to work with local employers for solutions. Thinking about working with schools and local employers and providing services there was, again, part of their strategic plan. Continuing to build out primary care, behavioral health, and specialty access. Continuing to meet the needs of senior living and baby boomers and beyond, basically through the elder care services that they offer. Their commitment to being a 5-star quality program. And I know from sitting in on their board meetings that they really spend a lot of time talking about that and thinking about that and how they improve the quality of the services that they deliver. Number 8 was to remain independent. And I know that we all support that, and we want to be sure that that happens. But number 9 was the one that you've already referred to, and that was to pay off their outstanding bonds early. And so that commitment was to pay them off in 2029, as you all have already discussed. That means that 2028 would be our last payment to them because they use our 2028 tax collections to make that 2029 payment. So my understanding is that as is yours, 2028 would be our last seeded payment for those hospital bonds. And I know that you all have been a force in bringing that to the hospital's attention. I know the hospital kind of had that in the back of their mind also, that they needed to think about doing that. But I know that good stewards of our county tax dollars is what you all are all about. Compliments to you to help the hospital see that that was important that they do that, and they've built that into their strategic plan.
And thanks again for help negotiating on the commissioner side.
Happy to do that. That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions, which I probably wouldn't be able to answer any.
You guys want to go ahead and,
It's not a written agreement, so it's something that they're committing to, and this is why all of us need to have it in our memory. Who knows who's going to be here in 5 years? We just got to make sure that everybody follows through.
Right, and that's the reason I think we wanted to make sure we got it in our minutes. I know this document sits in our minutes, and if it's your pleasure, in your minutes as well.
if you want to approve just entering that letter into the record, and just get it on your minutes.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to enter
Second.
that letter.
Second.
Got it.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think we're fortunate to have a locally owned county hospital here. I think they do good work. I think it's supported well by the county and your money. And if it wouldn't have been for our predecessors having the vision to create a new hospital and keep that hospital out there going, we wouldn't be here today, talking about this. So I'm glad we are.
And I will say the hospital didn't have to do this. They could have said, hey, we made an agreement 20 years ago and it's not going the way you wanted, deal with it. And that they could have done that, but they were willing after these discussions to make it right, to make it the way it was intended. So I think that's to their credit. So
Tony, do you need my copy of this, or have you already got a copy?
I could probably find one, but let me get it just in case.
I wrote on the top of mine. I didn't write much. How's that?
That's fine.
I didn't write anything bad.
I'll just close it off by saying, I think at times we were perceived as being anti-hospital. That was never the case. And again, I'm thankful to the hospital for stepping up and, working with the county. And, I made the comment before about being a good community partner. I think that's definitely doing that. So thank you to them. And I think it's good for Adams County, especially as taxpayers.
I don't think this could have been accomplished without Dr. Smith helping us.
Well, sure, we still retain.
Okay. Julie Marie? Yeah.
Yes. Back last year, approximately a year ago, we had an abatement request for Red Gold. We went through the procedure of, they came here, presented what they wanted, the abatement. It was for a 10-year abatement, graduating increments, and it was for the building of a warehouse. It is a substantial business within the community and a contributor. So you made the motion to adopt that as, or to grant that and adopt the resolutions confirming and declaratory. But they are required to come back on an annual basis to ensure compliance with the annual tiered abatement schedule to ensure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to get the tax abatement. They filled out, was it CF1?
CFO.
The state required form, the CF1, they've completed that. I've reviewed that. It appears as if everything that they have done thus far is in compliance with the proposed project that they presented to you. So I would make the recommendation that you approve their continued abatement status. And if you do, you need to take a vote, and there would simply be a form that would be filed with the state, which would allow them to confirm.
I'll make a motion to approve the abatement.
I'll second.
Corey?
Yep.
Moved and seconded to approve the abatement by, is it resolution?
No, it's just to approve the continuing abatement because they are in substantial compliance.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
sign here, and then you sign it on me. Before we forget. I'm not gonna forget, but I'm making you do it right now,
Before I forget.
before either one of us forgets.
First one, yes. Uh-huh.
There you go. Very good.
Okay.
Janita,
Dates,
that's right off, right back there.
you want to step forward?
13, I think.
Good morning. We're talking about, hopefully I'm talking about the transfer request, correct? All right. So I just have for you, your consideration, moving money from contractual services over to equipment. During the March 26th commissioner meeting, I presented a program that I'm recommending that the highway department implement for countywide bridge preventative maintenance. To do that preventative maintenance, we need to acquire some additional equipment. One would be a trailer mounted air compressor unit used to clean bridge decks and joints and corners of any debris, purchasing a spray bar, and then starting to purchase a lane seal. It's a penetrating sealer. It's not a top coat like a crust or glaze. Really, it's a penetrating sealer that we can put into the concrete that actually bond to the aggregate itself, thereby resisting water penetration through the bridge decks. The purpose of that is to, one, keep any salts that might be getting onto the concrete bridge decks from penetrating into the steel rebar and reinforcing, causing it to corrode, expand, and then cause cracks internally and delamination of the concrete bridge surface. The bridges we have in the county, about 60% or about 100 bridges in the county have these concrete decks surface. This will help kind of extend their lives. The intent is to try to resist that corrosion so that we can slow down the decay of our infrastructure. The cost itself, for what I've estimated, was about 25 cents with life cycle cost equipment and the actual sealer itself to purchase. So for a bridge, labor, if I ignore the labor costs since we're using that equipment collaboratively, it's really about $400 a bridge. I can't have a contractor touch that. They won't even drive to the bridge for the money it would cost us to do it itself. So really, it's a wise choice in my mind. I've recommended the commissioners have approved it, and with your support, we'll move the money and I'll start the process of receiving quotes for the compressor, which is the large part of that purchase.
Yep. And just so you know too, for transfers, for the most part, I don't think many of us care much at all. If it's a transfer, we trust your judgment. It's whenever there's additionals is when we get a lot of questions. So, thanks for the information, but appreciate it.
It'll be important, certainly when I come with you with an actual budget this year.
Yeah.
I want you to kind of know why there's things moving around and I'm trying to use the money within this and there's opportunities within certain areas and I think for the purposes and arguments for everybody's sake, I think we'd rather buy something to be used as equipment versus consulting fees. So where I can, I've tried to reduce some of the consulting fees that we already have on the books and then what we're going to be doing into the future as well. There will always be a little bit of that, but.
It sounds a no-brainer. Just curious, is it like a yearly application?
They're estimating that you can get up to 12 years.
With one?
From one treatment. My goal is to try to go through and get all the bridges within 5 and do about 20%. So about 20 bridges every year out of the 100 we have. And then we'll see where they're at.
How long does that extend? How long does it extend the life?
Well, it depends on how new the bridge is. So we're actually, my goal is to try to go to our best bridges we have and seal them first because we'll get a better life cycle out of it. If there's already chlorides and there's already corrosion in the rebar, it's not going to do a whole lot of good. But certainly it's better to hit it and kind of keep the moisture from getting there and causing more rust. So even if you got a little rust in your car, you might still wax it. So similar situation. It's a very low cost insurance policy for us. And if I can take a $700,000 bridge and add a year to its life cycle from 50 to 51 you're talking about maybe a $7,000 per year savings. So it's pretty significant, trying to extend those, getting from 50 to 60, 60 to 70. Every year you can extend that. It just gets us from trying to do 2 or 3 bridges every year to 2 or 3 every year, 2 every other year. I mean, if I can take one bridge out, it's a significant payback for the county. So, and it just kind of delays some of the preventive maintenance. I can't stop the abrasion that we're dealing with. I'm still working on a plan for that, but this will kind of help with a lot of the different bridges around the county.
This is awesome. I also don't have any problem with it. This is just out of my own curiosity. So, I mean, concrete sealers have been around forever. Is this a newer type of product or
No,
is it? Okay.
It's just the industry is so slow.
Okay.
They've studied this for, I think I saw studies all the way back into the 80s and 90s about these penetrating sealers. It's just it's slow to adopt. Like, is it going to work? And we take 30 years to study it. I mean, everything from, I think Oklahoma, NDOT, ODOT, I mean, there's multiple states don't trust each other. I think North Dakota and South Dakota both studied the same thing, paid for their own studies to prove that this stuff works. So we don't trust other governmental entities with their data or other colleges. So I've sat in classes for years and I tried to adopt this in Wells County and it just costs money.
Did they do it?
No, there was no labor and no equipment. So we didn't have the bandwidth within the department. We didn't have a place to even put the trailer indoors. So if you're going to spend $30,000 to $35,000 on a trailer compressor, I want to keep it nice and get 20 years out of it. And we weren't in a position to do that over there. So I never pushed to adopt that. Thankfully for us here, actually, that trailer compressor could be used for a number of different areas for joint fillers for even joints in the bridges, or potentially crack filling on asphalt. If you've watched NDOT do crack filling on 27 recently, that very compressor unit and setup was exactly what they have. So,
And so our bridges to this point have never been treated.
Nope.
Correct.
Nate, were you going to have them approve the grant application, the grant paperwork today, or do you want to do that next month? It's up to you.
oh, I had this on the top of my stack. So the grant paperwork, let's see which one we're talking about 27, correct? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So Bridge 27, that was one of the projects that we went after federal funds. Really the day I started, we applied, got financial commitment letters from the county commissioners. The grant itself was awarded by NDOT. I had my kickoff meeting with the state just a week ago, Wednesday, with the project. It's a $1.1 million federal award. It is construction and construction inspection only. The county had already started the design engineering on that project, so there really is not an opportunity for funding for that. We've already selected a firm. We can't go back for federal funds for that selection. So what I'm asking for you today with that is to essentially approve the grant paperwork that we had for that project. It'll set us up as far as not of the true appropriations on that project. It's just the paperwork on that.
It satisfies the audit paperwork. Did you have that with you?
I do not have that with me, so I did not print those out.
Okay.
So
Do we need that to approve it?
So, yeah, I'm allowed, I'll make a motion to approve that in the transfers.
You got a spare copy of that? Oh, you already had it filled out though, didn't
I
you?
had filled it out, so you should have, I thought I'd already.
I think we're good to go ahead and approve that because it still has to go to the commissioners. The only one that will sign that would be Dennis as the chairman. So if you want to approve it now, Nate can bring that paperwork over and we'll get that taken care of. I'll just have to get Dennis to sign it at another time.
So the one you emailed the other day?
Yeah.
So you have, okay, good.
For approving the transfer.
Sorry about that. No.
That's the motion, yeah.
Okay. Have a request to approve the transfer and approval of the grant. All those in favor of the motion?
All right.
You put me down as a second.
Corinne Fred.
Second.
I didn't think I heard a second there, but
No,
Corinne Fred, got it.
I appreciate it. Sorry. Excited about sealing the bridges actually,
That's
so
great.
obviously that was top of my list. So, but again, yeah, thank you very much. I'm excited also about the grant application, the paperwork for that. That's a big win. I know I've mentioned the commissioners, I mean, that grant alone is over 100% of what your Cambridge budget and even interest accrued on that. So essentially doubling your entire budget for the year on one project. So we'll see where we can go for more of those.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Nate.
Well done, thanks.
Very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Nate, how big is the total fund transfer? Total transfer.
The total transfer is $60,000. And that's more than enough to cover what we've got rough. I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to have to come back for more. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Say
you.
their name is, Cody, but you're obviously not Cody.
IT is on the agenda next, so Mike, would you come forward, please? Mike?
Last couple of commissioners meetings, we've been talking about our Microsoft licensing, which we do through Dell and have been for quite some time. This concept of doing volume licensing started off with Pat Norton, a couple of directors before me, and it's been carried on through not only Pat, but then Landon, and I inherited what we had there. And so it's been in place, been in use. We use it all over the counties, even for the city of Decatur, city of Geneva, all the police force, all the entities within the counties help pay for this licensing through their payback to us. And it was a good concept back when people sat behind a desktop computer wired into the network, and they could log in, have the software installed on the desktop. And we had authentication managers, servers, which are called domain controllers, that are sitting on the network so that they can access and they can change their passwords and that sort of stuff. That was the model that we've had all through these decades. And then when COVID came up and people started working away from their office and so on, we had to live through the contract periods. We signed contracts for 3 years and we have to go through them, but it does offer us some clumsiness in how we operate with the old models compared to what's available now. Now, we can continue on with the old models, and the prices have raised from the last contract period, obviously from 2021, what we were paying per year, it will increase, you know, if we just say, let's just stay the way it is, you know, and that number. Let me hang this up. So the current number, if we just stay the way it is and the way we've been doing things for decades, is $87,612.65 per year on a 3-year contract. So we pay that every year for 3 years. We do need to add some stuff to this because of what happened with COVID, in order to keep our people so that they can make use of remote meetings and so on. They got accustomed to that. And to bring in some licensing for a lot of people to use Microsoft Teams, which is used quite often around in various meetings that people get into. Like I heard Ian Gilbert, he said that he has to use it quite often because of people in the state and other counties and so on. They use Teams for their meetings and so on. And that it was pretty important for him that we have that. I heard that from a lot of people. And so if we add that component into it, then the licensing goes up to $95,876.90. That doesn't blanket everyone in the county. I kind of pinpointed some users that I felt really needed to have it out of that list. So it doesn't take care of everybody, because I didn't see the need that everyone would have to have a Teams license. And then the way that Microsoft is moving to help us out with a lot of different things is the third option, and that's the one that I'm recommending, which takes us to a completely different model. So the first two are under the same model. The middle one that I talked about added some Teams components into it that fit into where Microsoft wants everyone to go to, which is up in the cloud or up into Microsoft, where you actually pin licenses per user. And if we go to that, which would help us and assist us with logins, passwords, changes, you guys think it's difficult for you, you ought to sit in my seat when everyone has problems with passwords because of the old model. I constantly, and my staff is constantly having to help people out with password changes on stuff.
So just a question, when you keep mentioning models, you're talking about, it's not hardware, it's software and licensing, right?
Yes,
This is not going to
yes,
be.
It's going to take us up to a different way that Microsoft proceeds, how they want to do licensing. We can get into that because he brought up the question, and probably maybe most of the people here said, well, what's the difference between those licensing models? The volume licensing model, we just say, here's how many we think we need for this year. We say it for 3 years, but every time we make a payment for, that year, they come back to me and they say, did it change any? Did you add a bunch of new employees, or did a bunch of people leave? And do you want to adjust a number up or down onto that model? So, and when it comes in and we make our payment in April and we have the numbers there, like I could drastically go up and we're not paying immediately. We're not paying until the following year. Like if we hired a whole bunch of other people, or we kind of changed our stance and we wanted to have people have more product, I could go ahead and install it and not even ask Microsoft to do that. As you can see, John, since you brought this up, Microsoft doesn't like this. Because what's that mean? That means that there could be some lying take place. You could drastically install upwards on the accounts. You could come into the next year and you could say they've stayed the same because you did a 3-year contract. And the only way that they would know is they would have to come back in and audit us.
Mm-hmm.
And if they audit us, they take you in the back room and slap you around for a while and then fine you and then make you pay for the licenses on top of the fine. That's how that works. But until they come in and audit, they have no idea about what you're doing on that. So what they want to do on the model change, for them it's a benefit, is when you actually go to log in, you're logging in for the application up into their network. Okay, and that user has to have a license at that point. So if we went to install, like, let's say even 50 more user licenses, once we've reached our count of what we paid for And if we start to go with each user needing another license, they don't get that license until they get the payment. It's immediate.
Yeah.
You just don't get it. See, now you can understand why Microsoft is trying to shove everybody into this. And I can see later on that they will not probably even have volume licensing after a while. The only reason why they're still keeping it around is for those communities that don't have good internet access, and they want to use the product, but they just want to install it onto the machines. They have no means to log in cloud. And there's still people throughout the United States and the world that are in that place. So they're actually pushing it through. So what they're doing is as they're offering new things and people get to the point where they need some of those things and components, there's only one way to get it. If you want to do it, here's
You
the
gotta have
volume
license.
licensing. We're not going to include those particular portions under volume licensing anymore. So these new components, what you're going to do is you can keep volume licensing, but then you got to do add-ons to it, which now authenticates in the cloud. So those things are not as secure until we get to that third plan that I told you about. So our communication up to Microsoft to do these things, like even Teams and so on, they're not offering the security that we would have under that third plan.
So
our
without
people-
this third plan of yours, would we still pass the sniff test for the insurance survey you have to do?
Yeah, because, and I won't tell you how we have to do it, but I'll tell you our communication. Microsoft offers added security for the packets that go through up into the cloud to do that. So that's part of that process. That's part of that cost elevation is a more secure communication up with them. So the middle one that I gave you didn't have the secure communication. That's pretty big. That's why I'm not recommending that one.
And does Geneva and Bern and Decatur, do they have the option to not re-up with their agreement and just pay the, whatever their share is?
Well, I think we would only, because of our security and the things that we have to do to meet what the insurance companies would want. As soon as we do authentication up in the cloud, we would say we would want that communication to be secure. And so we would have to say, we would buy these licenses. If they want to do it and negotiate on their own and not even get licenses with us, then that's up to them. They can do that. But we would say, here's what it is, and here's what, to stay with us, here's what you're going to have to pay to go through that. I don't think it would be wise of them to pawn off licenses onto those people and them not knowingly know that it wasn't secure communication up into Microsoft.
So Mike, just so I'm tracking, the request right now is for an extra 15,000, is that?
Yeah, because during this whole thing, see, I don't know when I do the budgeting the year before. I knew it was going to go up, but I had no idea how much it was going to go. So I budgeted 100,000, figuring I hope that'll cover it, and it would under the first two plans that I offered there. But I'm trying to show that we probably need to take the step up to do this. Now, I can do a transfer from other line items that I have that I'm not paying till the end of the year to see where I'm ending up. Like, for instance, I got some things that are coming in less, believe it or not. And so I can start to say, well, I can take from this one that I know is less right now that I have to pay at this time of the year. I got some that I'm not going to be paying till December, and then I can see where everything rolls out. I think that what the commissioners were asking from the prior two meetings, and especially the last meeting, they were okay with us going into this more expensive plan that's $15,000 over, but it was going to be whether you guys wanted to commit to this 3-year plan or not. And I have been budgeting, if you notice, because I never know with Microsoft how these numbers can change, because they can literally change them on the fly with things. So I think I've budgeted for at least 2 years or maybe $300,000 there, just from the standpoint that when they come in to do something, if they actually audit us and so on and say, well, these prices need to go up, and still cover them. So,
Well, for me, I think I'm all about anything that's going to save manpower down the road. So, an extra cost, maybe, but on the flip side, is this pushing it further away that we need to have an extra person? People hours cost money. So the more that we can save that, any kind of technology to do that is good. But I would agree if you can do what you're saying right now, where we can do a transfer, especially this early in the year. I think last year there was a couple $100,000 unspent. So my guess is there'll be something somewhere that we can do. But to me, I'm comfortable with that. That sounds good to me, as long as we do it as a transfer, not an additional.
yeah, that would be my plan right away, is I would just do something at the end of the year and transfer it over for the
Transfer.
15,000. and
Bump it up
wait
next
and see
year.
where we're at,
Yep.
with some stuff and see. And we also have the payments from the interlocal, because what I'm doing is I'm paying upfront for these licenses for, Bern PD, Geneva, the whole town of Geneva, the whole town of Decatur, and all that stuff. There's more than enough from what's going to come in from them to make up for that 15,000 issue.
So I assume all the licenses are staggered. They're not all ending on December 31st for all these different entities. Are they
Yeah,
stacked?
they're all, the other entities is whenever I find out what
But who's
the
doing what?
costs are gonna be,
Yeah.
so I can then go to them and I have to have long conversations with them on what these cost additives mean to them
So
and why they need.
is there a firm date you pull the trigger and it affects everybody, or does the contract have to end before you implement this to whatever entity is being applied to?
No, I would go ahead and.
Just pull the trigger and everybody?
I would go ahead and implement it for them.
When is the contract actually up, Mike? I don't remember.
End of April.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I gotta have it, I
we need
gotta
to do
at
it
least-
immediately anyway, right?
Yeah, I gotta at least have your guys saying, hey, we're gonna go ahead and you can do the third option and we're gonna commit to
Yeah,
pay that for the 3 years, which is what the commissioner said that they would approve of, but first they have to come to you and see whether you wanted to commit to it for 3 years.
so the ask is to go with option 3, get away from volume licensing, get into the cloud and give us those additional features. And really, you can cover it this year, but we need to commit for the next couple of years beyond.
Yeah, I can put in exactly that number, maybe like
Right.
116,000 in the following 2 years of the budget.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer funds to start this year.
Well,
I'll
can
second
we just make it like all encompassing or not?
I don't think, we didn't
Well,
have a transfer.
Or do you just need a consensus from
I
us?
think we just need you guys to approve that third thing,
Third option.
because the next 2 years, he'll budget for that amount in the budget, so you all will know that that's coming.
Right, well, just like any other transfer though, it comes before us, so he's making a motion to approve.
That
it.
transfer will be next month, because
Oh,
I don't think we did the transfer yet.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to go with option 3 then with the Microsoft licensing and renewing.
Shane got a question.
One of the things that Mark said we need to sign this agreement was a 3-year commitment from council.
Right, that's what we just said.
So we just,
What is the cost of the third option?
115, 765, 55.
Let's put that in the minutes then.
I've got it in the minutes.
Okay.
100, yeah.
And then how is the cost sharing to be determined between the various entity and users?
is how many people they have and how many, you know, and based on the licensing that they need. That individual. So it's really specific on it. You know, if they have, for instance, let's just take Burn PD. They take the number of people that they have that are police officers. Each one of them need a separate set of licenses for their job. And so I got a spreadsheet that's all made out. And they come in and they say, yeah, that guy needs this type of licensing. So they put the counter over on the spreadsheet and it comes over and it gives the end total on that. We go down in the spreadsheet, Dennis, is long on what we all. So there's some things that they don't have to do and they can say, I'm 0 on the number of people. We're not going to do all those things. They can come down, but you know, these things, there's different line items even on this, what they can do. We come down and we list them, and Microsoft isn't the only thing that's on that spreadsheet. We have all different kinds of software that our people use. It's all based upon that, and we basically charge them for license use. Okay?
So right now, the other entities outside the county, they do pay for their own licensing, they pay for their own hardware. What they're really not paying for is the labor. And that's the thing that we're working on currently. I mean, Mike's doing obviously the lion's share work of that, but that's something that will come.
And I put that together when I came in because before I came in, they had no idea what they were paying because they didn't really, they were paying quite a bit less, and that's what all the commotion was for, because they weren't even paying for their licensing that was being installed on their stuff that the county was paying for. And so I think there was a labor charge.
But
The licensing charge was way more expensive than what we were charging for labor that we were missing out on.
I should correct myself, not paying for the labor or the infrastructure.
So was that approved?
So we got a motion in a second, so.
Had a motion and a second, we just need to vote.
Motion and a second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
Brad, you want to come up and present for that grant today?
Maybe we should all go out and buy Microsoft stock.
I already have it.
I can approve the seat back there.
They pay good dividends.
So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So basically, this is just one of our steps we do. So we are applying for a grant through the Adams County Community Foundation. It is for live voltage detectors. So it is a handheld unit that power lines, they can detect once you're within 7 feet of them, whether they're live or not. So basically, if we have a storm, we go out, trees down, trees leaning, and there's lines there. It's not so much, we're not going to mess with the lines, but sometimes you can't see them also. So this is also a secondary safety item, other than our eyes looking at it, that, hey, there could be something live in there. And at that point, nope, we're backing away, blocking it off.
Are these, I'm pretty familiar with these actually. So are these, you can change the settings and go, like how high can you go on the voltage levels?
No, not on these. It just covers a range of voltage. I'm not sure what it is. This is actually, Paul made contact with our contact for I&M. This is what they use.
Okay.
That's where we got this.
Sheriff, would they be willing to come in and provide a little training on them too?
I'm sure he would. Yeah.
This is like your day job, isn't it?
Sheriff's got deputies all over the county, car accidents, seeing poles. Is that something that his deputies can call?
I would want to be careful with that, because then if there's a situation like that too, it's a good question. Not that we couldn't, but I don't want to rely on that also,
Yeah, it's something that.
But yeah, it could be something that could be used elsewhere. I just would be careful about it,
So just to give a little bit of background on these things, especially during storms, our line guys and stuff will wear these. They actually have them where they can clip on their hard hats. And so distribution level voltages, which you see mostly going around town in rural areas, those go up to like, mainly they're 12,000 volts phase to phase, or 7,200 per leg, in comparison to your house, which is 120 volts. So much, much higher voltage. And transmission lines are much higher than that. For example, the very large lines across 27 between Monroe and Bern, those are 765,000 volts phase to phase. So, yeah, it's a good safety measure, and I think it's definitely a good deal you're getting those.
And what we would like to do is get one for in the bucket truck itself with the tree crew. And then Paul and I would each have one in our truck, because we're gonna respond on that stuff too, so we'd have 3 of them. So we're asking for $3,000 from the community foundation.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Third. They're only $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Sounds cheap these days.
And it, for, I don't want to say an insurance thing, it's just an added safety feature, yes, that is
The AP act like they might,
for our life, correct.
the AP act like they would provide any.
I don't know if we actually asked them if they would fight them, but. Jim's direction, second.
I know who Jim is, so.
Okay.
Works there, right?
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second to approve the grant as requested. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks a lot.
It's part of our paperwork for Tony.
Yeah.
Same thing you asked.
Yeah.
She sent it to my bank. Really? It is, but it's just
She's lost.
safety. Correct. Correct.
That's odd.
Tuesday for the commissioners, so. Okay.
You need to take this with you.
I think so.
They went to school in my son. Julie Marie.
Only had the red gold abatement today. Thank you.
Well, that takes to me. Okay. You did the one transfer. What do we have, orange in there? Yeah, it looks like there are a couple of more transfers. Do you have any questions on the other 2 transfers other than Cume Bridge that was already done?
Nope, I'll move to approve all transfers.
Second.
Who was that, Fred? Yeah.
And Dan, Sheriff, again, sorry. So you got a couple jailers on here. Are you up to staff again? I know you were having trouble.
Right now, we are down 3. We have 1 in the loops in the process of being hired. And we're gonna lose 2 more, Friday that are being hired by Decatur, so we pull 4 down coming Friday. Or, yeah, 4 down on transfers. So, no, we're taking applications, done some interviews, we did interviews last week with 3 and took 1 of the 3. So we're just still working towards
Only transfer.
filling the spots.
Then we'll do the other.
Sorry to hear.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the transfers. Did we have a vote yet?
No, not yet. Somebody interrupted. All those in favor of the motion for transfers?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then John had brought up the salary ordinance, which would be the next thing, and that, those are replacement people, I do believe, so for jail and for highway, if you all have any questions on those. Otherwise, we need a
Those are additional appropriations.
no, this is salary ordinance.
Make a motion to accept the salary orders.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve salary ordinances as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, and then, Bree had sent out with the paperwork and the additionals and so forth as to what they were. One had to be done because of Health First Indiana. We had to change funds, and so that money, these monies all just simply need appropriated. It was that, and it was ARPA, and, which, as you know, ARPA does not carry over year to year, so that's why we have these additionals. Any questions on any of those?
So none of these are really actual additionals, they're just redoing what we had last year.
Reappropriating or appropriating.
Appropriation.
Appropriate.
Any
Asian.
additional is just appropriating.
Yeah. Yeah.
An additional will never, ever be.
Well, it is authorizing new spending.
It is, but yes, these are just appropriating because it's not in the budget.
Okay, but so that would be authorizing spending.
They're in the negative right now, so like the money can spend. And same way with 1161, a lot of those are in the red, right? The money's already just appropriated. But more or less just.
So I guess I don't understand then what we're doing here. So all the ARPA ones I get, those ones, we already agreed on those last year and we just have to redo it this year, so
Yes,
I get all
and I went
those.
through and got- Hopefully this is the only time we have to do it this year, unless there is anything that's passed for the money that hasn't been allocated. But this should clean up everything for the whole year.
So the other ones, the public health, official training and transfer fees, those are things that we did already approve in the past that just need to get reapproved, or those are,
1161 is a new fund. That's the
Health First Indiana.
that's the grant, right?
Yeah.
the
New money from the state.
that-
Okay. All right, which we already went through all that, so that one makes sense. Okay, so then the elected official and the transfer.
The elected official was because Tommy came down here at budget time and volunteered, said that he would pay for the
Yeah.
training, but we couldn't switch it at budget time because it had already been advertised. So this is just fixing that.
Okay, that makes
The
sense.
transfer, yeah, it just must not have got budgeted. It's the only thing that means money. So that is Mike Whirling in the surveyor's office. That's his pay for doing plat work, and it's just not in the budget for this year. So it's running in the red right now because it's getting paid.
I think we just approved it this year. So that's probably why it
We
wasn't
approved
budgeted.
doing it, for the money for it.
Yeah, you had approved that last year. based
It
on
wouldn't
what
have
state
been
board of
budgeted
accounts
last year.
had to be done.
That's probably why.
Was it done after budgets?
It was, I think.
It's done
right at the end of the year.
That's why.
Yeah.
All right, so that makes sense then. So none of everything on here then, we have already approved at some point in time. This is just finishing
Correct.
it. This is not a new appropriation that we've never come up with up to now.
That's just fixing for 2024.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept as submitted.
It's an appropriate. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else, Joy?
I think that's all I had. Double check. Just need to send these around and signed. Sign it first, you want to sign it at the end. 3 pages all, 3
According to
pages.
the other matters as presented. Eric, would you like to comment on yesterday's affair?
I would, sir. Rivers Solar Cliffs, so it went very well. Our local events were, I'd say, well attended. We had heavy traffic through our county, starting about 9 to 10 a.m. yesterday morning. Stayed pretty heavy till about 1. People were mainly just still heading south and going east over into Ohio a little bit. One thing I want to prepare for you guys, let you know, you'll see, and HR will see, we had about 43 hours of overtime by deputies and 5.5 hours of overtime by dispatch for yesterday's event. Now, not all that's going to be paid, some of that's going to get washed and things like that, but if we weren't doing that, that's how much yesterday cost us, which is a lot less than what I anticipated, because we had days off and stuff changed and canceled for the whole weekend, but we only called extra people in on yesterday. We were back to normal operations last night at 6 p.m., so that saved us another 40 some hours of overtime. We had no real instances anywhere. We had a serious crash down in Bern. Can't necessarily say it was Eclipse related because they were both locals. They weren't paying attention. Motorcycle got ran over basically. Whereas for him, he's got a long road to recovery if he recovers. But we had no major incidents at any of the locations that I was ever made aware of. EMA had the EOC open, and it worked flawlessly. We had connection with the state EOC, had a briefing yesterday at 9 a.m., and it just went very smooth. We had no issues anywhere. Communication was well between the departments. Traffic after the event, starting at about 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock, was extremely heavy on US 27. I've been here 30-some years. I've never seen it like that on 27. Decatur did a great job keeping traffic moving through Decatur at the stoplights, and then it literally was bumper to bumper from 2nd Street to the North County line for 2 hours. I've never seen that. No accidents. Pardon?
I lasted all the way up into 469.
Yes.
I went north after work yesterday. It was crazy.
Yeah, and looking at the NDOT cameras yesterday morning, 69 and Angola South was that way until they hit 469. Then that's kind of split off and thinned out, but it was crazy seeing the traffic that way. But again, everybody worked well. The preparation that we did with EMA, it was worth it. We didn't get the numbers that we thought we were going to, and I'm not upset about that. The small amount of people that we had here was great, but if we had 30,000 people, that's 4 to 6 hours would have went from 4 to 10 probably. So have no other updates for you unless you guys have questions on anything.
The newspaper said this morning 500 people were in town.
Well, there was that. I don't know if they're visitors or not, but I would say we were doing estimates all day long. The Mirage had several hundred people at it. First Church of God, several hundred people. Monroe was a ghost town. There was nobody at the school, no one at 4-H, no one at the Ball Diamonds. It was weird. It was really weird. Clock Tower had 500 people between that and the property across the street, probably 500 to 700 people there. Swiss Village had 300 to 500 people there all day. It worked well. The Limberlost Bridge had a full lot. Glen Grove really didn't have any issues there. Kikianga and Decatur was full. Obachi was filled and closed at 11 a.m. It was completely full and they shut the gates. But again, we had no reported issues anywhere. We had a crash earlier in the day down by the covered bridge, a woman not paying attention and drove into the high water. But again, I believe it was a local person. So I can't say anything to do with the eclipse. But the response and everybody on those two crashes, obviously we had extra personnel out. It was handled quickly, cleared quickly, and no issues of any sort. So if nothing else, thank you much.
I pit rock, the Bob Molly had hundreds of people. I was shocked, just shocked. I went down, there was cars lined up all the way to Hyde, all the way through the hub on both sides. People standing in the trails.
So we had people out in front of all businesses driving around, just sitting in chairs. I mean, it was like I said, but it was
You gotta watch this guy here.
all orderly. Up on 27, they stopped on the side of the road, but off the road, watched it, got in the car, and kept on driving. So again, it was all good.
A week ago yesterday, he was in here and he said, all is good. It's gonna be sunny and 70-some degrees all week. The weather service is disagreeing with him, and yesterday's forecast in the morning was sunny and 70-some degrees.
Should be able to forecast it.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks.
Stan, would you like to share anything this morning?
Just a couple updates, I guess. Number one, applause to our sheriff's department and emergency management agency for the preparation they did. So thanks.
Yeah.
Couple things, we're expecting the arrival of a new generator for this building. It was initially scheduled on April 1st, but it didn't get here. And then we'll also have a transfer switch that's got to go on with the installation. So part of the reason I bring that up is because when we put the new generator in, or when the new generator and transfer switch are installed, it's going to shut this building down for several hours. And so are going to have that to look forward to. They're going to try and do it like over a weekend or whatever. Then that generator and power room will all be switched over and it will, power for the whole building. Anyway, that's kind of coming up. We're continuing to relocate residents at Golden Meadows. We're down to 5 or 6 residents out there. And we've got an administrator that's just very on top of residents' health conditions, financial conditions, and relocation options. So, we're very glad for the work she's doing, but we anticipate sometime later this year that all of our residents will be leaving. So that's still ongoing. Council on Aging has got their 5311 public transportation up and running, very successful, very well used, so we're glad to support that. And they're working on a new building for the vehicles, and hopefully before the next snowfall, we'll have a building for them to house their vehicles. So we're looking forward to that. And depending on their budget and how the building comes in, we may amend our seated monies allocations to accommodate that. Kind of what we're thinking. So I don't know that there's anything else. Steve's been working on a couple projects. I don't know if you have anything you want to. I don't know if I have any updates. Okay.
Thank you.
But any questions for us or anything?
Okay. Any other business to be brought before us?
Motion to adjourn.
John. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? You can stay.
We'll have a 10-minute recess to stretch your leg and get a snack before we start our work session to discuss budget things.
No, I'm.
A little bit.
There you go. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. This obviously is a joint called work session, kind of a pre-budget discussion. And as we get going, we've got something that Bree had put together a couple of years ago, and she just elaborated on it and included the past 2 years. So it's what departments had asked for and what they had left at the end of the year. We had given this to you guys, I think it was 2021. Now we got the updated 23. Okay. Here's a mouse pad.
Is there an email with this attached?
Yes,
You remember approximately when?
it was this weekend.
Oh, it's due, okay.
I think I sent it Sunday.
Sunday.
But as we get started, last month, Corey, Councilman Springer stated very well that the state kind of ties our hands on this max levy stuff. I reiterated that, it is true. After that, I know Travis Holman called both of us. I don't know if he called anybody else, but he called both of us. We have had a Zoom with DLGF and a couple of council members since then. And I did not realize it, but we have a local person that is pretty high up in the Republican caucus and serves with the Ways and Means Committee Chairman, Jeff Thompson. And this person's name from Adams County is Ben Tooley. It's Charlie and Kathy Tooley's son. He's the Director of Fiscal Policy for the Republican caucus. And we talked to each other for about an hour or so, and we're discussing property taxes and all that. As a matter of fact, I had sent you all a link to the National Tax Foundation that shows every state and where they rank in property taxes. Ben Tooley's the one that sent me that. And I believe, it's a long road ahead to get anything done at the state level. It really is. But he and the Ways and Means Chairman are willing to open up a dialogue and communication and also meet with Travis Holman. And so those are the things that have happened since last month's meeting. So I thought I would just share all of that with you guys. But that's all I've got to say on that. I'll let you guys ask any questions, make any comments, whatever you want to do for this pre-budget talk.
I think the big thing, I know Kathy, this was partly your idea too to have this, but I think the big thing is just trying to get those, like we did last year, come up with what are our goals, what guidances do we want to give to the department heads, for next year, and just make sure we're kind of on the same page with that side of the equation before we get into everything. So, I've mentioned to a lot of you guys, I don't think it's a stretch of a goal at all to make it a goal that the end budget ends up being 1% less than it was last year. I know that'd be the first year in a long time to go backwards, but when you really think about some of these big pieces in here, Golden Meadows being gone, that's like 2% right there that's out of the budget already. Last year we only went up by 1. We prepaid that whole server issue, that's like 220-some thousand, that's about 1% again. I spent a long time talking with Brad. What's the bookkeeper's name over there? Becky, yeah. I spent talking with 2 of them. They've got about an extra $2 million in their budget, which is like 6%. That they thought they had to put that in there in order to be able to have projects in the future. But they always have that extra in there. And so I said, can we make it more realistic? And they were all on board with that. The only caveat was they said if some project that we don't think is going to work all of a sudden comes online, we've been waiting for 5 years on a right of way and all of a sudden it comes in and we weren't expecting it.
Yeah, that's one of the
We're
tricky
come for an
things.
additional.
Nate just, after the meeting, said a new bridge just came up it wasn't scheduled for another 3 years. It just came up, and he's got to go to a meeting about that today.
Exactly. So that's what they said, if those type of things are unexpected and come out of the blue, they want to be able to make sure they can come and ask for an additional. I said, of course, I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. But let's just try and make a budget that is what we actually expect it to be, a little bit more like realistic. And they were all on board with that. So, that's another 5 or 6% right there. So I don't think this will be challenging at all, even with wage increases and everything else. So
Yeah, I think
that's
my
what I thought.
priority would be the wage increase. Make sure that, the standard 3% or, whatever we deem necessary, that's going to be priority.
Yeah. I think even adding those, and then you got the other stuff coming off, I would say step 1 is, can we agree on a target that we want to try and hit? We may hit it, we may not, but let's target something. And then I guess step 2 is what do we want that wage to be, and what do we want each department's increase over last year's expense to be, like we did last year.
For me, honestly, dropping it 1%, I'm fine actually just trying to hit a 1% increase or less, obviously. If it's less, then that's great. If we hit the -1, I'm fine with that. As far as like going above, I think the 10% thing that we did, that's the way, again, that's the way I kind of analyze the budgets. It would be the year, So for 25, the budget, obviously, we don't have 24 actuals, so it's 23 actuals.
Mhm.
And I don't know, as far as wages, I was just looking at, inflation numbers and all that stuff. I feel like somewhere around 3% is probably right in the ballpark for wages.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. Inflation is about 3% right now, 3.1 or 2, depends on the month, but
Yeah.
somewhere in that range, which for the 10%, we did that last year, assuming 5% over 2 years. Now it's only 3%, but last year was a lot more, right? So you've got the high inflation last year plus the lower inflation this year.
Well, I think most of the departments were able to be within the 10%, weren't they?
Well, they were within 10% of 23's budget, but they were not within 10% of 23's expenditure. About maybe a quarter of them were, but I think they're getting the concept that you're not looking at previous budget, you're looking at previous expenditure. So I would guess you'll have a lot more this year, but I'm okay with 10% again, because I know last year inflation was bad. This year it's not as bad, but
I think the thing I definitely want to emphasize though to department heads is just make sure that it's realistic. I mean, I think the clerk is gonna have some stuff. Is that right? Remember, Bree?
For this year or for 25?
Yeah, or am I wrong? Was that for this year?
I think they did some things this year.
Yeah, I thought she was
Equipment
saying.
and stuff.
And that's being paid out of ARPA.
We had equipment and they had they were paying, she wanted to pay the volunteers for running the election. I think was the only other increase.
I mean, those will be higher this year, but it should have already been budgeted for because we knew this was gonna be a presidential election year.
Yeah, so that's one thing. There shouldn't be an election next year.
If there is, it will only be.
So that budget will.
Yeah. I thought there was something else she was trying to do, but maybe not.
Those are voting machines and part of some scanning documents.
Yeah, and I think we allocated some ARPA funds for that.
Yeah.
So whatever goes above ARPA,
We'll cut into it.
we'll have to.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at what's on the screen and what we sent out, and ask any questions on that, because that shows, I think, starting in 18, isn't it? Is it 18?
Yeah.
So every year, it shows what the departments had asked for in that year, and it shows how much amount and percentage was left in each of the departments at the end of the year to give you an idea which departments, are maybe asking for more and not spending it, and which departments are being very close.
So for 23, there was 11.27% of what was budgeted not spent. So there was 1.8 million not spent last year.
And that could be what Corey was talking about regarding the highway department and things like that. No, that's not even them.
So that's just county general. If I go to the end.
Oh, okay.
You can't really look at this number because it's showing negative, but you got to remember that anything that's this is not budgeted. So does that make sense?
yeah, I was gonna ask about that,
So
because
we
I noticed it's-
budgeted 35, spent 86,
yeah,
but there's stuff that's not budgeted.
that's like grants and stuff, or what would that be?
I mean, this is everything. This is grants. I believe payroll clearing is in here. So there's a lot that goes into it that's not. And I mean,
That really isn't part of our budget, but it is because it has to be somewhere.
That's like
it's
full
funny
through
that
us, basically.
it is never budgeted.
It just
Some
fall-
grants, if it's in the grant agreements, you don't have to budget it.
Yeah.
We can take a deeper look and see if there's funds that's being budgeted that don't have to be budgeted. I mean, all
Doesn't
you're
have
doing
to.
is kind of skewing the numbers.
I don't think it matters. I agree. I don't think that matters at all, because if we just make the budget based off of what they spent last year, that fixes the problem all by itself. We don't even have to go into that.
Also, I think, at least for me personally, like, okay, we're saying 10%. If there's a department that's got some type of large expenditure that it's obvious,
Yeah.
as long as we see that it's, something that's, if they want to explain that to us in a regular meeting sometime.
Yeah.
And that's what kicks them over the 10%. They don't have to come in
So
front of us
like
for that.
here's highway for an example.
Self-explanatory.
They didn't spend 41.79% of their budget.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
And of course,
So, I mean,
Mike,
if it's like that, then, I mean, we'll be below
Yeah.
that, so, I mean,
and Mike Brown already told you he's gonna have, what, 16,000 next couple of
Yeah.
years and whatever else he still has to do.
Like in his point, so if he's at like a $1.3 million budget, 10% would be an extra 130,000.
Mhm.
So that 15 is just a piece of that, so that
Right.
would be,
And just remember, I know I've said this 300 times. If it's not a tax-driven fund, to cut it, just to cut it, to make the budget lower, you're not fixing, I guess, anything. Like, at budget time, the funds that matter are your tax-driven funds.
we say it 302 now.
Well, I guess it's kind of in comparison of how we used to go line by line on budgets.
Yeah.
And everybody said, why are we doing this?
Right.
So now it's kind of like we're going the opposite way. We're not going line by line, but we're trying to cut money that it doesn't matter. Like, all you're doing is appropriate. So it goes back to the additionals. Okay, fine, don't budget it.
Well,
You're just not appropriating.
right, but
So like last year, so the highway, that's $1.6 million that you still kept. It's still there. You're not saving
Right.
taxpayers.
no, we understand, but when you put out a budget and, let's face it, I didn't understand, not that I understand everything now completely, but I understand a lot more now than I did 5 years ago before I was on council, and you see something in the paper and you think, damn, the budget went up 25% or whatever the number is. Well, if we can put a realistic budget out there, people do understand there are budgets. And so if they see that our budget, only went up by 1% like it did last year, and so, oh, hey, okay, that seems reasonable. But things get misrepresented, misreported, not completely understandable on some things. And then, people think, well, geez Louise, what's going on? So part of it is also, optics, right? So, I mean, I think we do want to try to meet some type of,
it's on us to do a good job,
Yeah.
ethically do a good job, but at the same time, what you're saying is the taxpayers aren't going to understand a 200-page report. They understand
they'll
the
see,
line items.
they'll see the increase. They'll never see that
So we got to do both.
budget went up by 20%, but they only spent 75% of the budget. So it actually went down 5%. The actual did. So they'll never see the part that we didn't spend that much.
I mean, if council
And so-
desires to do that, that's fine. You just have to realize, like Brad and Becky told Corey, that if something does come up,
Yeah. we know that.
you'll have to do the additional then.
Right.
Which I don't think any of us would be opposed to, right? I mean, some project comes online that nobody planned on. They want to do an extra $500,000 bridge that they didn't think they were going to be able to do for 10 more years. They got the money in their account. I don't see any reason why we'd have a problem with that.
I would like the department heads to take the opportunity and look ahead 4 or 5 years. Like in IT, we know in 5 years, we're gonna have to do all these servers.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're doing, honestly,
Yeah, but-
we're working on a schedule for servers, a schedule for computers. Actually, I think he's kind of got that. And so.
But all
but
the
the
department
thing-
heads need that.
But the
Yeah.
thing that you also need to remember is you're budgeting that way, but you're not allocating every year that way. So, that's where, we're trying to set aside, at least I feel like the goals for any of the CUME funds is to try to actually, they're called CUME funds.
For a reason.
Accumulate funds. Yeah.
And so we want to accumulate funds for, and the CUME cap, for larger capital expenses and not just nickel and dime all the time. For CUME court, we know we're gonna have at some point potentially have a large, change, addition, whatever is gonna happen with all that. We don't know yet. But anyways, to have that stuff there, but just because it's accumulating, that means you're leaving the money there for, in 5 years, hopefully we can pay in cash and save ourselves by then it'll be 150,000 in interest.
And that's what I want.
And
Yeah.
that's what.
Do we want to, maybe this is what you're trying to say, Bob, but do we want to try and ask them this year when they submit their budgets, also submit a cum, like, tell me what you think you're gonna need over the next 5 years. Submit it with your budget.
Yeah, that's what I want. So I want their budgets to be realistic, but I don't want them to have to depend on taking money out of the cum funds. Set your
Right.
budgets to cover your expenses, still put money in the cum, and put what we want in the cum funds to reach these goals in 4 or 5 years.
Well, we're at the very beginning, but I have started talking with Rick about putting together a capital type
Right.
of, it's at the very beginning though too, because I'm not sure where he stands on putting some things together for me that, matter of fact, I texted him during the meeting, to hopefully talk to him before I leave today. But, that would hopefully cover what you're talking, so what you're talking about is what we have been talking about, is a 5-year plan on up to 10, 15, 20 and all that.
I'm talking about capital projects plan, Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, commissioners, what do you guys think about, because logistically, I think we're gonna need you at some level to help push this. Because if I just go out tomorrow and ask all these department heads to give me a list of what they need in the next 5 years, they're gonna say, pound sand, I don't need you.
Well, I suppose at least if you can do that with some of the heavy hitters. I mean, some of the heavy hitters that depend on cum funds are obviously highway department. The engineer, they've got road projects, they're always,
Building grounds.
and then the IT department. So, you know.
But then we get hit all of a sudden with like clerk needs 400,000, where I would have never thought clerk would need anybody.
Well, you know, and maybe the clerk is going to be heavy. I'm not saying don't ask the other departments. But, you know, some of the heavy hits we've taken over the last few years were because they knew the ARPA.
Right.
Well, now that everybody knows the ARPA isn't there anymore, it's like, it's going to be unrealistic to come before us with it.
The other thing, maybe, I hope they don't come with a giant wish list.
But-
Oh, we need this and this and this, like.
Yeah, or you almost solicit, yeah,
Well, there's nothing wrong if they do, but it's not gonna be for this year.
right.
Just like the highway department, I mean, they're looking at finishing up 700 south, that's a big budget hit. And then also a couple of things we're working on is improving 800 north for a mile, that's gonna be a heavy hit. We've always planned on that for a long time. And, you know, looking at a couple other road improvements that they're gonna have to acquire some property and stuff, so, you know, they're always gonna depend on those cum funds. Just like Nate said, you know, he could have never got this over $1 million match if he hadn't had funds and cum funds to do our part of the match. So, you know, they're always gonna need those. And then you look at, like the courthouse, if we present a project with the judicial center, you know, that's gonna be, eat up the capital funds pretty quick, just preparing for a project, if it moves ahead. Just preparing for a project like that. If it's something we want to fund, how we're going to fund it.
So for example, with this building, we're at all, and actually it feels kind of warm in here today. Do the chillers ever get fixed? Are they done?
I turned it down a little bit.
Okay. But the chillers and the roof were a big focus, right? But I'll tell you right now, we have all of our boilers are 25 years old or older. So that will be the next thing. And that's one of the things I talked to Rick about. There's other things. So that's the type of stuff we need to get on a list, put on a plan, and start planning for how we're going to pay for it over the long term.
What about this? It's just an idea. What if because we can say it all day long, but unless we have some kind of a process in place, it's never going to happen. So what if every year as part of the budget process, they submit their budgets to us in whatever it is, May, June, I forget what it is, but when they submit it, we also give them a one-page sheet that they need to return back that has projects that you foresee in the next 5 years, projects the next 10 years, projects the next 15 years, and a ballpark estimate that you think maybe. Then each year as part of our budget process, we can just compile all those and say, all right, this looks like we're going to need this much money in these many years. Can we make sure we have at least that much going into cum each year?
But the
I
only way
think
you're
that'll
looking
be-
at extra cum is if you up the rate.
Or budget outside of it like we've been doing.
But you're not gonna get any more money, right?
We just need a
You
plan.
have to up your rate.
They have their own tax rate.
Well,
It's on tax rate.
right.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm talking about. All I'm talking is like working on with again, this will all be stuff that happen, we will be asked, those questions will be asked of the departments. Now, if there's something they want to put on there, I mean, I would just maybe have a question on there. Long-term, do you see any big expenses? Like if it, so a large software expense would not be a capital project, not really.
Because it happens
So-
every year.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that, yeah.
So in the past, most departments did not have a capital line item.
Right.
They had maybe 4,000 that would be like an equipment. And then I believe it was Randy, I think Randy was on. We emptied out,
Yeah,
we
Randy
needed
was
the
on.
money in county general because county general was hurting. So we emptied out the 4,000 because our DLGF rep said that your 4,000 is capital purchases. Your capital purchases should be in your CUME cap or in your CUME funds, because why are you setting a tax rate to your people for capital projects, capital purchases, but you're not using it, which is now what we've reverted back to. We have a capital tax rate, but we're not using. So
It
I'm
will
not
be
sure
used.
want to ask every single department as far as projects. Like
Right,
if you
that-
go to Tony, Tony's probably gonna say, we
Right.
don't have, but so you
They
guys
may not
can
even know.
differentiate Because.
Yeah, they may not even know.
No,
That's
they're
where,
not gonna.
that's where, again, that's.
But we need them thinking about it, because what I don't want to get hit is with a $500,000 bill in 2 years that we're not ready for and don't have money in CUME funds for, that we could have been saving for, but we didn't know.
Well, I think I think we've started the process of, I mean, the only thing left in
Yeah.
the CUME court is a recurring annual expense of like 15 or 16,000 that I guess stuck there. Everything else is out of it. And in CUME cap, the only thing left, I think, was IT expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be only
So-
a handful of departments that would
Right.
But there was-
utilize it.
Yeah, there was still
I think that's where we are now.
500,000 to $1 million, somewhere in there in the CUME cap. I don't remember exactly.
Well,
What was
let's-
the expenditure at? Or
Let's say
budget?
you run all that math though, and it comes out to in 10 years from now, we need, between now and 10 years, we need, I'm making up numbers, but we need $15 million for a new roof and new this and that. But the total money generated by CUME only comes up to 10. Well, we know we're gonna have a $5 million shortfall somewhere. Where's it gonna come from? Let's figure it out now instead of when it comes, so,
There's going to be some stuff that we have to have, requirements probably. I mean,
yeah.
but our goal would be to minimize that,
Yeah.
obviously. So in CUME cap, we've taken a lot of the spending out of it. And honestly, I'd like to try to get the regular type of IT spending out of it as well, but we're talking about servers, that's going to fall under CUME cap, switches, servers, switches. I'm not sure about how the computer rotation goes.
Vehicles, basically any of that stuff that you don't need every single year.
Does that include like tablets in cap?
I wouldn't think so.
I think you put that outside of that. I mean, a lot of times the capital expenses need to hit a certain number, which, I mean, you could make it to do whatever you want, but I'm just thinking of the larger purchases that we're gonna have, like, again, servers and switches. We're not spending that every year, but it needs to be accumulating every year.
So you get to 5 years, we can pay it.
Well, we have building grounds, the courthouses, IT and highway. We should probably just include whoever else has a car for their department,
Yeah.
put that, and then everything, let them fill it out and we can, sort through and say, no, no, no.
So we may be surprised, or do you get another one like the clerk's office that you weren't expecting comes in and says, I need $500,000 to scan in documents back to, you had no idea that was coming.
But that's not a capital purchase, though.
I
Not really.
Printer
would say it
copiers
would
would
be, though.
probably be capital, wouldn't it? Because
Not
he's
really.
got the printer copiers? No? Would be.
I think they were good.
Because he's got a schedule where they're gonna start being replaced because a lot of them were purchased in 18.
The computers?
The printer copiers in our office.
Right.
Like extension office is
Is that
not
all
in
through
good
Mike?
shape. What's that?
Is it all through Mike? Would he do
Yes,
that?
Mike works with Perry ProTech.
So he's got
They've got a schedule, yeah.
For cap.
He should have a schedule, like Fred was saying, set up for those. Actually, he and Tyler Sprunger of Perry ProTech came to the commissioners and maybe council, I can't remember, about replacement plan and had, the newer ones highlighted in green, some in yellow, some in red. And I know the extension office really needs a new one right now. And commissioners, I think you were on that email where Mike said he'll take care of that. But there is a schedule for that, so I don't know how many, Fred, he would want to do in a given year. You know what I mean?
I haven't, I'll ask him if he can like print the schedule so we actually can see him and what that actually.
You guys would have a better idea of how much you would need in there in any given year, depending on how many he has to replace.
I'm just throwing a number in the dark, so this is probably not completely thought through, but what if, because you're bringing up a good point, how do you define capital? Because, in the business world, it's something that produces something, but that's not really what we're saying. Maybe we say if there's something that you foresee is going to make your budget increase by more than, pick a number, more than the regular 10%.
Well, it would
like
be
some item.
It would be anything that's outside of the normal operations that we see every year.
Yeah.
And so like for, the auditor's office, their main expense is labor. Really.
Yeah.
And then some miscellaneous other
So
things.
maybe you say like 10% again. So like an IT budget, you're like, if 10% is 1.3 million, it'd be 130. If you're gonna have any item that's gonna hit your budget that costs more than 130,000 that normally doesn't occur, we need to know that, or some kind of a number like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, as an example, using them again, they have normally labor and some miscellaneous stuff, but then was that 2 years ago that you had the big software purchase?
Yeah, we got Xsoft, and
So
we
that
do
is
have in our
obviously an
budget,
outlier.
we have the software in our own budget. A lot of departments run it through IT. Our software, we pay out of our budget, so any natural increase that these that these vendors charge, that and labor would be our main thing. Hopefully, we don't need any new software for a long time, till after Ed and I are out of office. That'd be okay.
Where in this discussion should the judicial center come in?
Well, we haven't heard anything about it yet.
Well, isn't that something that we're looking forward to in next year, possibly?
Stan might be a little.
We are getting ready to propose the project, but I've held off on proposing it to council because we're dealing with available real estate that we would need for a proposal. I apologize for the delay. I hoped to do this last fall. We didn't get the appraisals back and so.
Is this something that we present in a special session or?
Real estate can be an executive session.
Executive
Yeah,
session.
Yeah,
Maybe we can move along.
that's actually what I was hoping, just so we can talk freely and.
It's like a third,
That is one.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Real estate and personnel are the two main
ones,
ones.
and litigation.
Litigation.
Executive.
Because my other thought is you're gonna come up with, people are gonna think of different projects every year. So like your future cash flow forecast is gonna change every year based on, all of a sudden a clerk's office realizes they need something they didn't know they needed, so I feel like we need a process that keeps this every year. Otherwise, if we do it one big time right now and then forget about it, it's not gonna be that great.
I don't think it hurts to put a question on there. I mean, but honestly, hey, let's face it too, sometimes a mandate coming down from the state can make something arise, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we all know that. Sometimes it's out of our control.
Yeah.
So, I mean, putting a question there, I saw they're aware of any project or large purchase they're gonna make.
In the next 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
and leave it up to, and we can sort through it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't-
But as far as like the capital plan, I
I
mean,
mean, that gives us an idea.
I have started discussions with Rick about, first of all, acquiring some information.
And I would explicitly list vehicles or equipment too, just.
Right.
They might not think of it. Well, yeah, we always need it.
No, that's definitely part of it.
Do you
Well,
guys-
what Fred was talking about, unexpected things. I think Matt was council president in, I think it was 08 or 10, right in there where they came up with the property tax caps. And because Adams County had always been so frugal, there was no extra money for them to use. And they took away millions of dollars from local governments to be able to pay the bills when they put those tax caps in. So they had to do a hiring freeze and everything else for a couple of years. That was before your time even, I think.
They still had the hiring freeze when I started.
How'd
But
you get
those are
hired?
the kinds of unexpected things,
Well, we didn't hire, we went through,
or that's why
Whatever
that's
the
been
hiring
too late.
Oh, yeah.
and you had to come get permission.
We had a good conversation.
I had to come and ask before, and then
The
they would
Ways and
break the
Means
hiring
Committee.
freeze. So it was like we had a hiring freeze.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Well,
high.
there's still positions you have
So
to
we
But
got
the
them in
person
with
was
them
retired
now.
Right.
before.
You have hiring
Yeah,
freeze,
whenever
but
you
there's
get
gonna be
that,
some positions
like
that
some
you
kind
have
of
to hire.
time code or something, I'm happy to sit on that.
Do you want to
here.
talk, do you want to go through the things that's on the list and then come back to this whole?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yes.
Fire.
Like I had to do a Zoom.
I didn't look at the list.
So when I sent out the, we said we could discuss valuation adjustments, professional salaries, highway, and 25 wage increases. So it's all to do with wages. I just didn't know if you wanted to continue that conversation before you move on to other stuff, or if you want to talk about later.
Start with the first item.
So evaluation adjustments, I know a couple years ago, most of you were here, we put together that compensation package that y'all approved effective January 1, 2022. And in there, we said that we would review it every 3 years at minimum. So we're not technically there yet, but we will be in 25. But I just wanted to discuss with you guys about who receives the evaluation adjustment and who doesn't. And then if you have an opinion on tying more of the increase to that or less of the increase, or what you want to do. So I put together a spreadsheet that I just finished this morning, and we have 141 different positions in the county. And some of those, there's multiple. So like deputy sheriff, obviously there's multiple of those. But independent, separate positions, there's 141 total. And of those 141 positions, only 70%, or excuse me, 50% of them, so half, are eligible for the evaluation
We're
adjustment.
talking about the quarter.
Yes, we're talking about the quarter. So I just think that you guys either need to decide to offer it to everyone, or we need to offer it to no one. I think that having some people in the department who are eligible and some people are not, it causes rifts in the department. It incentivizes or potentially penalizes some employees to work harder versus not work harder because they're not getting it. I just think that there needs to be more of a standard across the board, and keeping in mind we're not necessarily talking about the employees who are in a matrix. We're only talking about the employees who are outside of the matrix.
I personally would scrap the quarter altogether, in my opinion. And I think, let's say we set on 3%. So, and just to use a general number, we'll say that 3%, let's say that equals $100,000 for your department. Or maybe that's a big number. Well, let's say 100. Let's say it equals $100,000. That department head then would have that number, and this group right here, we're in that department. Our department head would have to split up that $100,000 how they see fit, up to, that would be the 3%. So maybe I'd only get 2.5%. Maybe he would get 3.2. Maybe he'd get 2.7 or something like that.
Didn't we come away from that?
So that theory, but that theory is in direct contrast with what you guys did back in 2018 with New Focus. Like you intended.
Yeah, that's what we went away from.
Is it?
Because you
Okay.
didn't want it to be like favoritism or the squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever the case may be. That's why we went to the bans. So
Gotcha.
I'm just bringing it to you guys because I think that of the 141 positions, I think we need to decide to either have it and apply it and do it, or we need to not have it and
I
not
vote
apply
to
it and not
scrap
do
it.
it.
You're like in the middle of all of it. What's your recommendation? What would you recommend we do? I know you got an opinion and an idea. What is it?
So I don't think that 25 cents incentivizes or penalizes anyone for their performance to significantly change on that value. I personally am not eligible for the 25 cents evaluation, but Bree is, for example. So we work very close, and there's no rift between us based on that. That's not what I'm saying. But my point is that I personally would not feel significantly incentivized to work that much harder to be eligible for up to 25 cents per year. I'm going to work hard no matter what, but that doesn't do anything for me necessarily. I think that if you get into the $1.50 range, then that's a completely different story. Or if you're talking about they have to earn 50% of whatever increase you guys offer, that's a completely different story because that is going to incentivize someone if they know that they're at risk of only getting 1.5% versus 3%.
This is my problem though. I mean, again, that's why I think you're talking about what I just said, though, is using the percentages, but having so far the incentive thing has pretty much equaled everybody gets a quarter.
Right.
So to me, it's pointless.
So I will say too, to add to that, is that I don't feel like our current evaluation process adequately reflects like a true performance. And that's
but
partially on me.
I will say, from talking to different department heads, they feel like everybody should get a raise, so they're gonna give them the max, whatever it is, unless they just don't like them, and that's happened too.
Right. I tried to sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. When we initially went to that system, it was for two reasons. One was department heads were not doing evaluations. And so the other thing was to give the employees an incentive to give a good evaluation. So in practicality, I think we accomplished one thing. I think department heads, I think they are getting evaluations. The other thing is like, they just give all their employees fives and say, you're good to go. So on one hand, it kind of works, but on the other hand, it's like, yeah.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say anybody did anything wrong
I'm
either.
not sure what the answer.
It's a slippery slope. It's really hard to set. I don't think there's any perfect way, because it just depends on who's doing the evaluation. Some people will do a good job of evaluating, and other people, hey, I like you all, boom, you're all getting it. Or I don't like you and you're getting none.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, my wife went through 40 years of evaluations at St. Joe, and her raise depended on that evaluation. So I thought, hey, the system worked there, but it's not working here.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, that over the last couple of years since I've been here, I've tried really hard to coach department heads on how to do a better evaluation and how to constructively criticize employees without putting them down, and all of those things that go into a good performance evaluation. But if you guys are seriously considering tying wages completely to evaluations, I would have a lot of work to do in teaching them and training them and redoing our, essentially like our form documents, because it doesn't give an accurate reflection of performance, in my opinion. So
They're making all the department heads essentially human resource experts as well, whatever the field is, plus be an HR.
We need them to do that, right? Like
They work daily with them. They're the ones that should do that.
I know,
and that's how every business operates, right?
Yeah,
Like we need them to
be
do
more-
evaluations. So the fact that the evaluations are getting done is a good thing. They're not getting done well is the next problem to solve. But to give up on it and just be like, we're done, I don't think it's right either.
how many didn't get a raise
does it
in a year?
matter that
So I have a feeling, like you said, everybody gets fives.
Yeah.
it stands instant, like, okay, out in the real world, everybody doesn't know what everybody makes. When you guys.
Somehow they figure it out. I don't know how, but they do.
But you know what, it's not like here, like when you guys approve wages, it's emailed out.
Right.
And we have enough employees that, I don't want to say have enough downtime, but they have enough downtime that they will sit there and they will do the math and figure out, well, Sally over here got all of this, and then they're gonna throw an attitude towards it. So I don't know if that plays into it. It does, and I think that goes back to me needing to work with department heads more to do some type of training on how to offer constructive feedback. Because Tony, I'm picking on Tony and Bree, but Tony should be able to look at Bree and say, you didn't get the full 3% because of XYZ reasons. Like, he as a department head should have that ability. So if you guys decide that you want to tie wages to evaluations, either fully or more than it is now, that's something that I'll have to undertake to help department heads learn how to go through that process. But I will say this too, a lot of department heads, when I first started, because I started like 2 weeks before evals were due, but we got all fives. They've gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. So we do have to give them some credit there that I haven't seen, I think there was one department off the top of my head that last year everybody got all fives. And when I first started, it was like 50%. So we're managing.
I mean, I actually get evaluated twice a year.
Right.
I mean, I get a mid-year, they call it PMR, and they tell you how you're doing, and we take a look at what the goals were at the beginning of the year and see how that's going and all that stuff. And then I get a full-fledged end of the year.
Right.
Steve?
I just want to echo Stan's comment, and speaking of the 25 cents, to me, it always felt like, did you get an evaluation? Granted, it may not be a great one, it may not be well done. I appreciate Shannon's work to improve those evaluations, but we went from evaluators just refusing and didn't do evaluations and said, what are you gonna do about it? And that, to me, we've accomplished that piece where we said, here's what we're gonna do about it. We're gonna penalize your employee, and they're gonna be pissed at you because you didn't do my evaluation. So I think we've really gone a long ways. They may not be great, and Shannon, I think, has admitted she's got work there to do, but if they're getting better, I sure hate to see us go back to scrapping those, because unfortunately, the way we run this railroad here, we have no power to go to an elected official and say, get your evaluations in or else. They're gonna say, or else what?
Right. That's a good point. But again, I'm not trying to say that the terrible job, I'm just,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to come up. There is no perfect way because and I understand that. I mean, I do, so.
We've all been in the evaluation world long enough to know that there is no perfect evaluation world. The one thing that additional, and this is probably not for your consideration this year, but one of the things that we've deployed or are going to deploy is a learning management system. And there's going to be some training that's going to be required of employees, whether it's sexual harassment training or whatever. And I've also seen where that quarter or that little bit of a bump may be predicated on every employee completing their required training by a certain period of time. I know where I work, if I don't get my training done, I don't get my bonus. So if those are, and so that may be something else to factor into this maybe in the future, is to use this to encourage and effectively require employees to get whatever required training done that and Shannon's kind of working through this and exactly what's it going to be and whatever it is, we may be able to use that little piece of its quarter or whatever it is, a little piece of incentive to say, go get your sexual harassment training done so you can get your quarter. I don't know. That's probably not for consideration this year.
I do think that would be part, I know I almost brought that up. I thought, maybe not right now, but I don't know, talk about it later, but it's, is it called BLR? Is that what it is?
The platform.
Yeah, BLR training.
What if you do it, so what the problem right now is that a smaller number, but still a number of people are just given fives, and then it's administratively difficult to work on? Are those the problems?
How much work does it take you to do all of that?
I don't think, in my opinion, that's not a factor, because essentially what happens is they turn them in. I sit with the commissioners during theirs, but that's only 7 or 8 people. But they turn them in, I plug their score in on the ordinance, which we have to manipulate for 25 anyways. Like, that's not, in my opinion, that's not a factor.
That's not the issue.
But in my opinion, the problem is that the evaluation itself, I do not believe is a good reflection of true performance. And that I don't believe that 25 cents really incentivizes anybody to work harder or less hard,
I agree with both those things.
Yeah, so I think that we either need to say we're gonna apply it to everyone, or we're gonna apply it to no one, and then whatever.
When you say apply it to everyone, like,
Not everybody gets it right now.
I understand, but I mean,
So
who doesn't get it right now?
So the only employees who are eligible to get it is full-time, categorized, non-exempt employees. So for
Full-time.
See, but I don't think that's unusual. I mean, otherwise otherwise you're considered a manager, and typically they're paid more, and their pay structure is just different because, I mean.
But we have a significant number of employees who are non-categorized that are either part-time, or they are just uncategorized, they still get paid hourly, or whatever the case may be. I mean, if you take out the sheriff's department altogether, I'd still say that number of who gets it versus who doesn't is 50-50. So that's what I'm saying is, like, Bree gets it, and I'm not picking on us, but Bree gets it, but I don't. Like, I'm not a manager. I don't get paid significantly more. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that you either need to say, we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. And then from there, whatever your decision is, it needs to be, we're going to increase it or we're going to leave it the same.
If you remember, we had this discussion with community corrections.
We did.
This all came up, and because I think they have to submit their budget earlier, so they submitted it, and then the quarter and all this stuff. That was a discussion that you guys had with community corrections. because they did not get it.
We're saying we either need to do it or not do it. Is that everybody gets a quarter or nobody does
I think
across
you
the
apply
board?
it to everybody who's not in a matrix, or you apply it to nobody.
So it's part of the problem that we keep shoving people, moving them over to uncategorized. I mean,
No, not necessarily. I think of the true new positions we've had in the couple years I've been here, there's maybe only been one or two that have been non-categorized, like engineer was obviously one, that makes sense, and then technology training coordinator, which also makes sense. But for the most part, I mean, when we've had new positions come up, they've been banded if we can band them.
Well, should we look at it as just taking our position as council and applying X% to everybody across the board and maybe just use those evaluations as, monitoring their performance, whether it being, getting in trouble for being too many tardies or, any.
but there's no trouble you can get them in, that's the problem.
Yeah, and I
That's
don't,
the only thing we can control.
I agree with Steve and Stan. I don't want to see them go away altogether because a performance evaluation is a tool that, my office heavily depends on when it comes to disciplinary actions or terminations or things like that. Like the first thing that I'm going to look at when you come to me with a problem is I'm going to say, well, what's their evaluation been for the last couple of years? And if it's been a 5, well, then you clearly don't have a problem because you aren't rating them anything less than a 5. So I don't want to see them go away altogether, but I can very easily see how there's going to be an issue with them getting completed if there's no incentive for the department head or the employee.
What if you
Like Steve's
change it a little bit from being a person, like well, I guess it already is that way. I was gonna say, what if you make it more like a bonus, which I guess that is already what it is. Like instead of making it part of your hourly rate, make it like a payout bonus at one time for the previous year's, evaluations. The reason I say that is because your hourly rate keeps going up and it compounds and it's gonna get really bad. Yep.
The only thing with that is they would all have to be additional.
My thought would be, what if you applied it to all not exempt, regardless of whether they're categorized or not? That would get you past that hump of one hourly employee setting aside another hourly employee, one getting it and one not. You really would truly get it to those folks who are in supervisory or management positions, salaried individuals, and they just don't get it.
That makes sense to me. That's simple.
For a quarter?
Yeah.
Quarter an hour, $520 a person.
Quarter of 2080.
Yeah, based on 2,080 hours full-time.
Then take taxes
I
out.
think you're right. I don't think it's enough to incent behavioral change in the employee, but it does incent the manager to do the dang evaluation, which is really what we were trying to do. And it doesn't cost us a lot.
And I know Bree's going to hate me for saying this, but I'm not wholly opposed to the one time per year to prevent the hourly from going up. But I mean, in all seriousness, I think that if you increased it a little bit more to 25 cents, it's going to incentivize the employee more to do well. Your hourly is not going to go up, which means your perf and your FICA is not going to go up. And then they have something to look forward to whenever the evaluation gets completed and they want to do a good job and it still gets the evaluation done.
I have a feeling $500 in your pocket at one time is gonna mean a lot more than 25 cents over the year.
Maybe about 400 after taxes.
Taxes. But yes.
So-
My thoughts are, why should you incentivize anybody to do their job when you know what their job is supposed to be? I think satisfaction can be accomplished by having a pool of money that the department manager controls by way of evaluations. And they have to be done to get the raise, for example. If one's going to get more than the other, I don't think incentivizing people to do more. I mean, they're not going to go out on the street and bring in more business. They have a job description, period. And that's all they do. So why should you incentivize them? Reward them on performance, not by longevity or credentials. Because along with credentials, you should have more responsibility and therefore come back by way of evaluation to give them more than the pool.
And I think that that's what we are talking about is incentivizing their performance. But I wholeheartedly disagree in this environment that we should leave the award up to the department head. And this is not offensive to anybody in this room, please, but we all know that an elected person does not necessarily have the same experience as somebody in the private sector who has been a manager for 25 years and is now in charge of 10 people. Like, I
I'm
mean,
offended.
you are offended, I'm sorry. But I don't think that leaving it up to the discretion of the person in charge is necessarily the right way to go either. I disagree with that.
So who's it gonna be up to?
You guys, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I say that we apply.
You decide,
We
and then
make
the
the
evaluation is
blanket
based on
call.
whatever you decide.
So we're just saying, we just, okay,
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Like, we have no clue.
No, I'm not saying you decide the evaluation. I'm saying you decide that they're eligible for up to 50 cents or up to $1
Oh,
as
yeah.
a one-time per year or on their salary or whatever the case may be. And then
Yeah.
the department head has to complete the evaluation
Yeah,
inside of that,
that'd be
and then I
our
need to
call.
work to bring them up to speed on how to do better evaluations.
how many employees would this apply to?
Well, I like Stan's idea. Steve, sorry, that makes a ton of sense to me. Just do exempt versus non-exempt, because then that would get a lot of your own categories. So how many would that be? That'd be really simple too.
So of the 141 independent positions that we have, that would take us to, and are we including part-time, I'm assuming? Because right now it doesn't include part-time.
I would assume.
Yeah, although I think, yeah.
It's gotta be
it would-
prorated, yeah.
It would not be the same amount.
On a prorated basis.
So that would take us, including part-time, that would take us to 93 of 141. But the 141 includes the elected officials,
Yeah.
matrix, like stuff like that. So there's gonna be some that you're not gonna capture no matter what.
I like that. That's easier.
So we would change it to everybody who's non-exempt, full-time or part-time, no matter what, is eligible. And then do you want to do it per hour throughout the year and add it onto their base, or do it as a one-time?
So the thing about base, so you still have to put it on the salary ordinance.
Wait, before we get there, it was half of us got it and the other half of us didn't.
Correct.
And now we're taking that 50% and cutting that in half?
No, you're going from 73 were eligible of 141 to 93 are not eligible of 141.
We're just going, anybody who's exempt status would not get it.
Yeah, so exempt,
Instead of being non-exempt, instead of being non-exempt and categorized, it's now just non-exempt no matter where you are.
right.
Yeah.
And then so,
I think when we originally did that, we had no really clue we were gonna have so many non-categorized. I think that non-categorized pool
Has gotten
really
bigger.
grown
Still
based
more
on
category.
2018 or whatever the numbers.
Categories.
Yeah, it used to be like 10 people.
exempt contract and matrix.
In terms of the impact, I think giving them a check at one time is gonna feel more of an impact. And if it's right after the evaluations.
Yeah, it should.
So Bree's right, it is still gonna have to go on the salary ordinance, so there's still gonna be some legwork there on the admin side, which is, I think that's just a replacement of what we do now. But then she would also have to do, like an individual adjustment for every employee who's eligible for it. But I think that we might be able to reach out to Lau and see if there's an option to import that data that one time per year. Like when we did the comp payout, she just did it by hand because it was a one-time thing and, you know, we only had 25 or 30 people, but if it's gonna be a reoccurring thing, I'd wanna see if we can automate that process a little bit more. Okay, so everybody who's non-exempt, and then the only people who are not eligible are exempt.
Sorry.
Exempt, matrix, elected, and
I mean, is this gonna put a big rift between the haves and have-nots again, though? You know, I get the raise and I didn't, now they get it.
There's gonna be some elected people that piss it off. I'll tell you that right now.
If they don't have it already, so only people, you're adding it now, you're not subtracting.
This 100 different scenarios.
So to me, I mean, I think the one-time thing I think is a good idea too. And the question to me would be either like a straight 500 or 1,000, one of those two. And then how much of that you get depends on if you score a
can you
3.7 on your,
still have to vote on this in a meeting though, correct?
Right.
so if you score a 3.7 out of 5, then let's say it's $1,000, you get whatever, so maybe that's $370. I don't know.
And I could come.
Or no,
up
that's
with
not right.
a-
It would be double that.
You can use this,
It'd be
I think the formula you
740.
have now, if I remember, I feel like I made that formula back in the day, and I think it did like,
I changed it.
Okay. Right, I think what we had though was like the first half, like if you're getting straight grade out of a 5 and you're getting a 2.5 or less,
It's
you
3
shouldn't
or
get
less.
any bonus. Like that's bad.
So 3 is the average, and if
Yeah.
you're below average at all, then you get 0.
Yeah.
And right now, it's 0.4 is a nickel.
And you and I actually talked about that.
I put that together. I think
Yeah.
you were in my office, you helped me, we talked about it one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, okay, good. That makes
So I
sense.
can develop something and bring you guys a couple options of what you want to see, and just give you choices, and you can tell me what you.
And whatever you all come up with, since this is just a work session, we don't vote or anything, nothing's approved, he'll just present that package to you guys at a council meeting.
What's the amount gonna be? Is it 500 or 1,000?
So right now you're saying a quarter's about 500?
It's $520.
It's a quarter of 2080.
On 2,080
So-
hour work year.
So 50 cents would be 1,080
Be 1,000.
or 1,040.
1,040.
So 1,000,
Just
for
make it straight
example.
1,000.
Let's just think about that for a minute though before, so, and this is how many employees?
93.
It could cost you 93,000.
93,000.
And that's if everybody achieves that
Yeah.
goal.
Achieves the high.
Actually, it's not costing 93 because it was costing half of that, right, already.
But in that 93, your part-times will be prorated. So if they're,
Yeah,
if
they would
they're a
be more
half-time
like-
employee, they're only eligible for 500, instead of
Yeah.
1,000.
I think the only time that might come into play where people like you, Fred and Corey, talk about getting miffed or whatever, would be if council, okay, this is costing us $93,000 for this, so we're only gonna give a 1% raise to everybody. Then the ones that don't get that money are gonna be mad because you're taking that 93,000 off of what everybody else that isn't on that would be, you see what I'm saying?
And I'll honestly, if it's a tight year, I mean, if we decide that there's a 1% increase, this should be revisited every year too, frankly.
Yeah.
And so like say this year, we're good for up to 1,000,
Yeah.
let's say. But next year, maybe it's only up to 500. I don't know.
So that might need to
But-
be worded that way whenever you do it, just that it's looked at every
The
year.
bonus changes based on what.
And they're not eligible until the department head gets the
Evaluation.
evaluations in.
Keep in mind too, that the
And that
25
training.
cents has always been in addition to what you guys offer annually.
Right.
So I
Right.
wouldn't necessarily want to see you change how you offer an annual
No.
increase.
No, yeah.
Because this has always been plus that. So I do think it should still be in addition to that.
You need the cost of living, and this would just be merit on top of it.
Yeah. You perform well, you're gonna get an extra $1,000 a year.
Before, did that go into their year after year
It
and
did.
compound for their
It
percentage?
did.
So it'd be saving us
Yeah,
in the
that's
long
what,
run.
that's what I was saying, like this.
It did
Yeah,
compound.
exactly.
Back to Dennis's point on rewarding longevity, I've kind of taken this off subject a little bit, but at the time we kind of set this up, we decided not to reward longevity through the pay structure. We reward it through increased accumulation. So longevity is rewarded, it's not rewarded. Paycheck is rewarded.
Yeah, because I mean, even though there's not officially a range, you're making $20 an hour, and that year you get 3% raise, and so that takes up to whatever, and then you don't, I mean, if you have a super strict bandwidth, what they just accumulated is almost irrelevant. Somebody could come in, and you've been there for 10 years, and they start the next day, and they're gonna make exactly what you make, so we have like a $10,000 cushion to the high side, right?
It's $10 per hour.
Or $10 per hour, yeah.
But
okay.
I want you to keep in mind too, that a rate cap is not a range for the band.
Right, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is over and above what the actual band is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but keeping in mind too, that's a good point, keeping in mind too, that right now, the way that I kind of sell, and I know we don't award longevity necessarily, but the way I kind of sell it is that somebody who's been here for 10 years and gets that 25 cents every year is always going to make more than somebody at the starting band rate.
Right.
But if you take that out of the compound and you increase the band the same amount that you increase the actual wage every year, you're going to go back to somebody who replaces someone who's worked here for 10 years is going to make the same.
Well,
So just keep that in
the
mind.
It's
band
fine,
should,
but they don't
the
get the same
band,
PTO and all that, right? So it's like dollar might be the same, but the benefits aren't the same.
Right.
the band should increase whatever percentage everything else increases.
That's a decision you guys make year over year. Yeah, and we explicitly said that because I didn't want to tie your hands in saying that the band goes up by 3% if you offer 3%. I wanted you to have the flexibility.
Yeah.
That raises a point of my concern is that band structure obsolete?
I don't believe it's obsolete. I think that,
Should we have it?
should we have it?
Yeah.
I am not enough of a compensation management expert to give you an alternative solution right
We need
now.
some type of structure.
Yeah, we have to have
Well, I
something.
mean, we do.
We spent a huge amount of money and a year of my life building that thing, so I want to just dump it for no reason, but I mean,
That's
if it's
why
not
we're-
working, then let's fix it, but there was a lot of investment in building that.
But if you think about it though, I think in my time here, that was done before my time, but we've been tweaking it almost every year to try to make it better.
Has it accomplished what we wanted?
I think it has, I do, because and I wasn't here either, but from my understanding, the biggest fault that we had when it came to wages was the squeaky wheel gets the grease, the favoritism, the leaving it up to the department head. So their favorite person got the most and their least favorite person got the least. So I do think it's accomplished that, absolutely.
So 1,000 a year, paid once a year, do we want to add that other training on there as a condition?
Well, I think you're gonna have several things that factor in, right? Accomplishing that training, when does that roll out?
As soon as I get my life together and get it done.
So that's gonna be part of it, but job
Oh, by
performance needs to
2025.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm hoping it's next week, so.
So let's say, it's on a 5-point scale. You could say, accomplishing your training.
Gets you
maybe-
eligible.
Maybe gets you eligible, gets you to the average, let's say, and then anything above that is gonna be job performance. So if average is 3, if you accomplish your training, you're at the 3.
Well,
I would like to see you guys say, if you don't accomplish your training
You're just not
by the
eligible.
deadline, you're just not eligible.
yeah,
period.
that'll be a lot simpler.
Okay, well, there you go.
That's good.
That's simple.
Kick them in the butt.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what about for part-time? What's the dollar value? Do we do 500?
Like, what type of
People
range
are
of
ready to
hours do we have for part-time people?
It's a big range. If you take into consideration like Parks and Rec, they sometimes work like 1 hour a week. Some of their part-time for like gymnastics, but then we have employees who are regularly scheduled part-time, like Carla Marble upstairs in the health department. She average works, 15 to 20, I think. So it just depends on the position.
Is there an easy category in there that somehow they're already categorized? It's like regular versus seasonal or something that would,
Most of the part-time employees are categorized, which is good. But no, there's not really like one size fits all.
So, I feel like somebody who works 1 hour a week shouldn't get the same as somebody who works
Right.
15.
1 hour a week.
If they work
Yeah, honestly,
15% of a full-time employee that week, then they're eligible for 15% of the 1,000. If
Yeah.
they work 60%, they're eligible for 60%.
So just take the number of hours for the
I
year.
was to say, you could just set it at like a number of hours per week minimum threshold and say if you work less than this, then you're not eligible.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we should do.
So what's your hours number?
What's your recommendation? I'd like to bounce back to the professional.
Say probably 10, because I do
sounds
think
about
that the
right.
employees who are regularly working in Parks and Rec should be
You said
over
that's all
in
right.
some way, like.
So
even
if you
if
work
it's-
less than 10 hours per week,
I
you're
thought you
not
said I want to refer to the professional. Nope, that's not right.
That's fair to me. So
and then what's
if you work less than 10, so it's 10 and above, you become eligible, but then there's another range for, or
Or you just want to say 10 times 52 weeks or whatever and just make it a year. What's easier?
I think per week is gonna be easier.
Like an average though? Like if someone changes in the middle of the year, what does that do?
That's getting to be administratively complex.
We just went
Okay, so,
to like.
okay, what if you just say percentage of out of 2080? How many hours did they work last year? And if you worked 500 hours, one Excel formula. Really, at that point, you just type in the number of hours they have and out it comes.
Again, that equates out for a year, part-time, if they work less than 500 hours. That's the same as 10 hours based on 40. So 500 hours on a whole year.
Makes
If
you
you work less
eligible.
than 500 hours for the whole year,
You're ineligible.
you're ineligible, because that's 10 hours a week for 52 weeks, basically.
I don't think that would be that hard. I would have to finagle it.
yeah, make it
but-
annual instead of,
Make it on an
Weekly.
annual,
that should
make it
simplify
as easy as possible on you ladies.
So how are we, when is this going to be paid and how do you plan on putting this on the salary ordinance?
Will be paid at the end of the year, probably, right?
What about dividing
I would
up
say
into
right after
26
evaluations.
payments?
When's that?
No.
Evaluations get submitted with the budget, right? Evaluations get submitted with the budget?
Yes.
which is in June.
June 15th usually, yeah.
So if we pay these out in July, August, somewhere like quick, somewhere,
Yeah,
obviously next year,
immediate.
but as quick as we can.
It would be an additional for this year, right?
Well, I don't know if
Well,
we
we're
do it
talking-
this year. This is for next year's budget.
That started next year.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was hoping you get your training done by, that's why I said
We can build it
2025.
into the budget for
It'll be
next year.
done sooner versus
Yeah.
later.
I mean, and I guess,
We want to do additional on it this year.
so would it just come out of the regular line item?
So
Mhm.
500 and below, you are not, well, 499 and below, you are not eligible. 500 and up, you are, but then it's not, also not of 1,000, it should be of like 500, I think.
So you want to base it on $500.
Yeah, full-time,
This
part-time.
year, full-time, part-time, yeah.
And that means that all of
Sounds good.
the, like, I don't request, evaluations from like the gymnastics instructors who work 1 hour a week or like 1 hour every 2 weeks because
Yeah.
Well, they're not eligible anyway.
that's what I'm saying. I would still have to get an eval from the department head or whomever is in charge of them. So that might be a little bit more for them based on this. So for this year, we're still doing it the same, is what I'm hearing. Okay.
Yeah,
You
this
guys
is
are
for
getting
next
it,
year.
we're getting there right now.
We're set, we're discussing 2025 budget.
Sorry.
What about the degrees? Any changes or thoughts on 25 cents for person having a degree?
Problems with that, or is that working fine?
Most of the complaints that I hear is that 25 cents doesn't incentivize anyone to go get a degree, which I don't think that was necessarily the intention, but also that, well, there's one employee in one office that has continually brought up the fact that I am discriminating against her because she doesn't have a bachelor's degree. And I had to politely explain that's not what that means. But she still, every time we talk about it, brings it up. So like she's disgruntled because there's somebody in her office who's worked there for 5 years and she's worked there for 20 years and she makes less than him. That's the type of complaints I get on that. It's not necessarily like, I mean, I think everybody would appreciate it if it was more, but
Yeah. I don't see a problem with that. Let's just take one thing at a time. So
okay.
are we good on that then, or?
Yeah, I'll draw up some stuff and then bring it back to you guys in the next couple months.
So just so we're on the same page, summarize what you have there, so.
All non-exempt employees are eligible for performance eval adjustment, including full-time, part-time, and uncategorized. 1,000 single time when eval is completed, payable in July. Council could change every year, less for part-time, less than 499 hours per year from last eval to eval deadline for part-time makes them ineligible. And then ineligible altogether is exempt, matrix, elected. I think that's it.
And so it'd be $1,000 bonus is what we're thinking about, and then 500 for part-time, is that what we said?
So to get qualified though, you have to complete the training. that You're
And
supposed to complete.
So basically eligible would be you do your training, you have your evaluation, you're exempt, and
And then
you're more than 499 hours.
and then your evaluation determines how much up to 1,000 you'll get.
Yeah. I like that. Sounds good.
How about elected officials? Just go straight
Included.
percentage?
You don't get it, they're in the,
$1,000 incentive? No way.
Well, actually, they just passed the law this year that auditors can get up to $2,000 stipends for extra work. I haven't asked for it though.
So, so the other couple
Literally
things-
just passed it.
The other couple things that were on my list that I had asked for you to send out was professional salaries. So I'm not asking necessarily for an opinion right now, but I just want to make you guys aware that I am going to be doing some wage research on the professional positions to make sure that we're staying within 10, 15, maybe 20% of market on some of those positions, because it is going to be harder to replace those learned occupations if somebody leaves. Like IT is a good example, and I know nobody wants to hear me say let's spend more money on IT, but like Bob and Ethan both make 78. I'm not replacing Bob or Ethan for $78,000 if they walk tomorrow. Like it's just not going to happen. I mean, my IT guy at my last job back in 2018 made $80,000. That was 6 years ago. So I just want you to know that I'm going to be bringing you wage data to present at some point to make sure that we're staying in line, relatively in line with market for the more professional positions. So
We have a list of those positions. IT obviously is one of them. And
yeah,
whatever.
I will have a list. I was hoping to get it done today, but it just didn't happen. And then the other thing that I just, as an FYI, so I met with Brad, Paul, and Nate from Highway a couple of weeks ago, and they approached me about taking themselves out of the banding program. So as it stands right now, they're banded as an NE6 plus 60 cents if they work the operator rate. That it does pose some administrative challenges for me and Bree to have the two different rates every year. So based on what they brought me, my suggestion was that they have like a grade essentially for different positions. And if they can run certain equipment, then they're eligible for the different grade. But that way, that's their flat rate, right? Period, end of story, that's your rate, no questions asked. The problem with the two different rates is that technically we're supposed to be doing a blended overtime and we're not doing that. And that's like a big no-no. So just as an FYI.
Blended overtime?
So technically under overtime rules, what you're supposed to do if you have multiple rates that you work throughout the week, you're supposed to take them all together and average them out and then have an overtime rate based on that blended rate. And we don't do that. They just get it based on their blended rate, their operator rate. So it's just a risk that we're taking is all.
And this is just at the highway department that
This is
there'd
just-
be a band.
That wouldn't affect surveyor at all, would it?
Surveyors do the same thing.
Surveyor will be
as well.
affected too.
Have to include them too, because they've got those two people. So it just goes to say that there's one more position that you're talking about with the adjustments that they would come out of that if they went to that program. But I don't have a full-fledged opinion yet. I asked them to go do some more research and bring me back some recommendations. So we're going to talk again in a couple weeks, but I just wanted to make you aware that the conversation was being had.
So otherwise, you want to do, did you say 3% earlier?
I think 3% sounds.
So that was the other thing on my list. So I got all of the information from 2023 from like 40 counties, cities, and towns across the state, and the average increase was 4.25%. And then inflation was a little bit higher in 23 based on what we offered. So I would encourage you guys to consider offering like 4 to 4.5%, even though we're going to be a little bit lower than 4.7 or whatever it was last year. So.
I will say though, 2 years ago, our rate had to beat almost everybody's by leaps and bounds, didn't it? It was 8 to 15%.
Not necessarily. The average payroll increase across the board from 22 to 23, which was when we did the $2, was 8.65%. But keep in mind that we spent overtime dollars out of that increase too. So we went from not paying overtime to paying overtime. So we truly didn't go up in hourly wages necessarily by 8.65%. So the average, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it was in the 4 to 5 range. So we were over it, but we weren't double it by any means.
I would say still 3%, and then we have the discretion afterwards, see where we're at, and no? Was that one of those things I had a, yeah.
No, I agree with Tom because
We can't go over what we advertised, so.
but we're not going to advertise till after, so we can do whatever we want.
So I did put some numbers together if it helps. Just let me say those things out loud. So our 2022 total wage spend was 8.3. For 23, it was 9. And for 24, so far, if we take 3% off from 23, it's going to be 9.3. So I mean, we only are going up $300,000 in 2024. If you did offer 3%, it would cost you roughly $320,000. If you offered 4% across the board, it would cost you roughly $430,000. And then if you did 5% across the board, then it would cost you roughly $500,000. And that includes FICA, PERF, share pension.
Plus another 100 for the bonus we're talking about.
Correct.
So the number you just gave, the 8 point whatever, what's that?
So the 8.65%, that's the average difference in salaries from 2022 to 2023 when you guys did the $2 per hour. But that includes $120,000 in overtime that we didn't pay ever before because overtime was brand new in 23.
Just the hourly rate. I mean, I went through and did those numbers of the hourly rate. The hourly rates fell between 7 or 8, all the way to 14 or 15.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's keeping in mind that some people who got $2 per hour that made $11 per hour, their rate went up significantly. But somebody like Mike who makes 100 plus, his didn't go up by 10%.
I understand. That's what I'm saying. The range though was somewhere around 7 or 8 up to 14 or 15. And that's, I mean, I think one of the reasons we are not every year, obviously, but we're like flip-flopping between one year we do a dollar amount, and next year we do a percentage, And so if every year if we do a percentage, the top goes up a lot faster. And so by doing, so when they, on the dollar amount, the higher level gets a lower percentage by nature. So, but that's, because if we just go by percentage, I think one of the other drivers of the wage thing was the top kept getting bigger increases, right?
Right.
More and more.
And
And
the
so,
bottom didn't.
You're saying the spend
I'm
is
saying
different.
the total spend went up.
for
by
total
8.6.
spend, yeah, but
Versus the percentage of
yeah, I
it.
understand that.
Okay.
But it's,
So one of my,
but you can't look at the total spend because I could work 10 hours overtime this year and 1,010 next year.
or less employees,
So-
or,
But the total spend is still only going to be whatever you have budgeted for overtime, plus maybe 10 to 15%. Like your total spend isn't going to jump by 25% because of overtime necessarily.
Like,
Like,
okay, people work over. We don't have that much.
Right.
right. That,
But
that,
but I think you look at the hourly wage, not at the total spend, because that does fluctuate based on overtime hours. And you're paying time and a half for overtime hours.
and so that was my point too, is that the difference between 22 and 23 total spend for every wage that we spent was $786,000. But 120 of that was overtime, which we've never had before. So
Right.
your true dollars and cents, what I'm making per hour did not increase by 8.65% on average. It probably only went up by 5.5% on average. So I just don't want us to get so far out of line again, like we did in 18, 19, that we have to do a big adjustment because inflation was what, 4.7 in 2023, it was 4.1, and we're tracking for about 3.1, 3.2 this year. And then the average increase across all counties last year was 4.25. So my recommendation is you do a little bit more than 3, but
Where are we standing right now in similar counties?
you mean for 24?
Just right currently for wages?
so
Are we above or below, say, a Wells County, a Jay County, Whitley
I
County?
would have to do that research position by position, and it's not something that I've worked on. Like, I've done it.
I'm not necessarily looking for a position by position, but maybe a couple of positions and an overall average. I'm just kind of curious.
What was the percentage of that?
I think the way you measure that is, are people leaving to go there? I mean, ultimately, that's the question.
Because also, when you look at, and again, I understand, because I go through the same thing. I mean, when inflation was super high, well, it's still high, frankly. My raises are not meeting inflationary percentages.
Right.
So, I mean, we're all going through that.
And I understand that too, and I guess I'm not saying that we should match inflation year over year, but I do feel like there's more flexibility in the private sector, at least in my experience.
I 100% disagree with that.
A one-time readjustment of everybody's wage.
I don't, okay, so as a business owner, this is what I was gonna say a little bit ago. I feel like it's unfair to the private owner because the government employer, I would say is much easier to raise wages, way easier. Rather than me as an employer who also has increased expenses, now I have to go figure out how I'm gonna raise that. I can't afford it. I can't. I will tell you as someone who works in the court system, I used to pay way better than the court system. No more. None of us can keep up with the courts, because everybody can pay with taxpayer money way easier. Because I have to have more revenue come in the door to pay my employees, and I'm not getting that. So it is a disadvantage for an employer to try and keep up from the government employer who can just throw more money at it way easier than we can. So I was gonna say that's sort of my beef with the whole thing. Like I want to compare to the private market and not necessarily what other governments are doing, because I don't feel it's fair to all of our employers out there that they can't keep up, and it's not their fault.
Which I don't disagree with you. I think that you should take both the private sector and other counties. I mean, 50% of the time when I come to a wage review meeting, you guys ask me, well, what are other counties doing? That's where I get that direction from. But I agree with you. I think that it's much easier because we just say we raise taxes and keep it moving. But I would like to remind everybody as well that the commissioners have taken active steps in order to decrease some of our big expenses in 24.
Yeah.
So like, I would say I'm hoping that we're gonna be looking at like $150,000 to $200,000 decrease in expenses on health insurance for this year. So we are trying to make sure that what we're spending is wise and we're not just throwing more money at it for the sake of throwing more money at it. That's something that they regularly look at. So in my little not good at math brain, you agree to $500,000 increases, but you take away 200 that we've made adjustments to save, you're really only going up by 3. So
Yeah, no, all that makes sense. The only thing I was just trying to point out is I think it's harder for employers to make up the difference than it is for governments to make up the difference. It's the other way around.
I mean, like my last job, when inflation got crazy and when wages got crazy, like their starting rate was like $12 an hour to stand on a production line. And they eventually had to go to like $16, $17 an hour start. But they've done that one time per year. In addition to a merit increase, they've looked at their matrix. So they do have the flexibility of just saying, hey, we're just going to pay more, you know? And
Well, they don't,
But
they
then what
don't
happens
have,
is,
well, they make the determination if they can or not, and then they do it or they don't. And then if they can't, or they think they can and then they can't, they lose money. And if you lose money long enough, you're out of business.
Right.
and then their price goes up, and that's where the inflation spiral just goes. But we don't make prices go up. We just take more money.
I guess my whole point of saying all that was that I feel like from my experience that private companies have the ability to look at their wages and do a one-time adjustment mid-year if they need to attract and retain and so on and so forth. They can, and they typically do. I mean, like, and I'm.
So look, I mean, California's a glaring example right now. They just bumped their minimum wage way up, and tons of people out there in the food service industry are losing their jobs left and right because those employers can't do it. And so they're looking at alternatives to paying those wages. And so, I mean, that's what happens. I mean, it looks
more automation, more kiosks,
more whatever, or out of business. That happens too. But I mean, like in the previous years, I mean, prior to the guy we have in office now, we had, inflation rates of 2% or less mostly. And we gave, I'm sure, I don't know, because I wasn't around then, but I'll assume we were doing 3% range in those days. I don't know.
One was 3, that was my earliest.
What would you say is the average, like, middle of the road wage in our county per year, like a total year?
Total
I mean, it's like 40,000 and kind of middle.
Well, I have my little spreadsheet separated by salary versus hourly.
But what I'm wondering is this $1,000 that we're talking about, if I'm doing it right, I think if 40,000 is a number, that's like a 2.5%. That's a big number.
47.3.
Okay.
Average. And that includes everybody, that's hourly, everybody. So that's matrix, anybody who's.
So that bonus is like 2.1% for an average person. Now it's going to be higher for someone making less and lower for someone making more. But we got to remember that too.
We're actually doubling the incentive bonus this year by saying $1,000. We're doubling that.
Right. And that's where I went back to earlier, is that before it's always been in addition to, so I don't want you to
It is
lose sight
addition.
of that.
It is
Just a lot more in addition to, like if you're adding 2% on top, up to 2% on top of 3%, someone could earn up to 5% almost at that point.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel pretty good at 3%.
I just wanted to say my piece.
I don't know, I mean,
so
I'm
thanks
just speaking for
listening.
myself. I don't know what you guys think, but.
I'm good with 3%, because that's, as I talk to people in different industries, that's pretty much what everybody's doing this year. Pretty standard across the board.
I'm okay with 3. I mean, what about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And that's across the board.
Inflation's 3.2%, so 3.
So elected, exempt, everybody, not exempt, all of them.
Yeah, that's fine. And then for the rest of it, so that's like the wage specific, and then the rest of them, we're telling them to try and submit, are we saying 10 again? 10 over expenditure, not over budget, 10 over expenditure from 23.
23.
Is that the number? I mean,
And it worked last year.
I think so.
Looks like we got something good going.
10% including the 3% increase, correct?
yeah.
So they can't vote on this stuff until May.
Until May. Yep.
Right, but that's what we're trying to do is get into the budget meeting in May and say,
Well, so I send all of this out. Somebody's taking off. So it's either I send it out now, or it's not gonna get sent out until almost the end of May. I'm off May 1st through the 13th.
can you schedule an email?
In another country?
No, schedule it,
But
but you can't
Get it
send
ready.
I'd say you can type up the email, schedule it to send like the next day on Wednesday. And then unless something changes, that email will go out.
But we have to vote on it before she can send it out,
I
right?
know, but I'm saying if we vote on it Tuesday, but she could schedule it to send on the 15th, and so long as we approve it, which we're all saying we will.
Yeah,
You
we
guys
meet
don't meet till
14th.
the 14th,
Yeah.
which is my first day back.
Oh, okay.
So that's a good welcome back for you.
So are we still thinking though, like have it due by June 14th?
Is that the day?
I would say
Is that
so.
Tuesday?
It would be a Friday.
So then they need to turn in their budgets, they would need to turn in their evaluations, and then also, you guys want me to come up with like a really simple one-page fill in the blank on that capital type thing for, what'd you say, 5 and 10 years?
5 and 10 years are fine right now.
I think that compromise that we did last
But
year,
I think just use the term large expenses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I think that's
Just don't, otherwise they're just.
they'll be confused on capital.
Yeah.
The compromise that we had last year, I thought worked really well. It got us down to the 1 day. It brought the departments that you wanted to see in and so forth. It allowed us to get our advertisements done. It allowed us to have our workshop. Everything fell into place with us meeting what we need to meet and you guys meeting what you need to meet. So
Again, I think we need to emphasize too, if it's, 10,000 more than 23 actuals, but if there is an obvious reason, they can just send, we know you had to buy that software, was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Okay, well, that obviously is an outlier. So take that off. Is it still less than, is that less than 10%? Then we're fine. If there's unless we have questions and we can let them know, honestly, but.
Yeah, I think we're getting traction, as long as they can make sure they understand. We're talking about 10% over expenditures
For 23.
for 23, not budget. That's the mind shift change, 23 over expenditure, then we need to meet with you. We don't care.
Yeah, so actually,
We
just
trust
just send them the 23 actuals. So that way,
We'll have it all typed up. And then between Shannon's stuff for the evaluation adjustments, because we need you guys to approve that. And if you approve what we're gonna send out, then we can send it out the week of, we'll send it out the week of council in May.
Yeah.
So my hearing will be the 14th, so it'll be sometime that week, and then they'll turn it in to me by June 7th.
I don't think it'd be a bad idea for council commissioners to work
And
on
I'm
the
not,
capital
I'm
projects
taking
plan.
it to advertise the
Oh,
new
yeah, I agree.
program next
We
year.
need the-
until
we need
we're
the
done
5
with
and
it.
10.
so, yeah, get it, yeah.
Yep.
But
And
then
then
you,
We don't know exactly what that looks like and, just to hammer out all the details and, actually we shouldn't, I don't think we should say anything about that till next January probably,
And
Well,
would it be easier for that to just come from commissioners, or would you guys be okay?
or
with that?
December.
but if they're gonna approve it in May meeting, and we need it in the budget,
That's what I'm saying. Can we just slap a line item for the anticipated total value in commissioners? For that,
You don't just slap shit anywhere.
clearly.
Apparently she does.
I'll
I
get
don't,
you.
I don't know, I don't know what you do if you don't want to know, I mean,
Well, you have to approve it
you
and
gotta.
you have to have
Well,
it in the budget.
we can put it in there. I'm just saying we don't need to go crazy and tell everybody that, we just put it out there and,
So more or less, they need to put, if they have 5 people in their office, they need to put an extra 5,000 in their deputy line item on top of their salaries.
Mhm.
Yep.
Which I think we can communicate without giving all the details away until it's official,
Just put it in there, don't ask.
we can actually have that, or can just have them do it.
which we do it. I mean,
I say we.
Yes,
You.
I can't
You.
change stuff. I will say I get flack back from departments.
Okay.
Why are you asking me to fill out a budget and you change my numbers? Is my only flack. I've had some come to me and say, I'm not gonna do my budget. If you're gonna change numbers anyways, then I'm not doing it.
Good
So.
grief. We won't give you any money. How about that? All right, compromise.
And I don't wanna do their jobs for them by any means.
I believe you. Okay, I'll get you like a one-page something on that
That's it.
large expense, something like that.
What else is on the list?
that was in my list.
And then, like I
Motion
said,
to adjourn.
I already said the only thing I need to do,
Was
if
there
we
any-
do in May what we
was
did
there
last
anything
year,
else
the
that we-
same thing, we're good.
Talk about?
What we needed was kind of talk about what all you guys want in budget so we can get it put together and have the approval in May.
You guys will
I mean,
need
you guys
to
have to see it on
discuss,
Friday at
like,
two.
in
I would,
August.
so this
something if
year,
you want to have one evening meeting.
what did we end up at, like
Oh, yeah.
1.7 or 1.8 on
For anybody
insurance this
else.
year that we budgeted?
But that wouldn't be till later when you
Oh,
know.
million. I still
Would
think
be
it's
the September.
1.8 active
Probably.
commissioners, and that doesn't include highway, sewer district, and solid waste contributions.
And so is all that okay right now?
I think it still is, so the, gosh, what's it called? I'm drawing a blank. The stop loss insurance that they approved for 2024 was actually like a 1% decrease from the 2023 stop loss premium. So that went down, and then again, we put in other programs, and we've talked about other contracts and stuff like that to try to see further savings on the whole insurance plan, but I'd say for 25, I'd leave it as is. And then hopefully in 25, we'll realize some of those savings, because the programs aren't starting until this year.
So
So
you're
it's
recommending that we
1.7.
could do like what was it this year? 1.7 right after year? 1.7?
Oh, and health insurance. And actually, we haven't moved over any of that 1.7. But the cash balance is 3,651,000.
And we haven't moved anything over yet?
Not from commissioners now, highways paying in,
Right.
yes. No, I need to do a claim. I can do it.
I know property casualty,
So we-
the property casualty insurance may come in higher.
And didn't we, for lack of a better term, didn't we kind of determine our baseline was 2 million balance we want to have?
That you want to keep in health.
Yeah. I mean,
I
it seems
thought it
like
was
that's been
three.
this, it seems like that's been the baseline from the time I came on here.
Cause that would be a little bit over 100% of
Well, we've
what,
spent in, I don't believe I've paid any health insurance out this month. So in 3 months, we've spent 738,000.
And our total
in 3
annual
months, so times
maximum
4.
possible costs for health insurance for 2024 is 3.9.
That's the stop loss, I see what you're saying.
I'm sorry, 3.5.
So if you hit 3.5, they pay the difference.
No. So our total annual maximum cost for health insurance, stop loss, everything, admin fees, claims, the whole nine. The absolute most we could ever spend is 3.5. And just for 2024.
Okay.
So that would wipe out everything that's in there, but that doesn't include commissioners. So you would basically be at 1.7.
Yeah.
So that's
So
what I'm
when we
saying.
actually have those discussions, I definitely want to talk about, the insurance and see the trend. I mean,
But remember, we had this last year, then we have to lower everybody else.
right. So we need to know that, what that is. And
So the stuff that we've been working on to try to bring the overall cost down, like the one program that we put in place only took effect on April 1st. So I'm not really going to know how that's going to affect us until we get to the end of this year. So I would personally prefer that you not decrease their contribution or anybody else's until we realize what the savings are and I have solid numbers for
we
you.
did 1.7 last year.
Correct.
I'd actually probably be fine with that again this
Yeah,
year.
we gotta leave that alone so we can track.
Yeah.
Right, so you know what you're actually saving.
Else we'll all
ultimately.
be chasing something forever.
And then I guess the other big one we already talked about, but just to make sure we're on the same page is that highway one where they're putting about double in for those projects. But I talked to them again, we're all good that if they get some project they were not expecting to come online, no one's gonna have a problem with an additional at that point, right?
No, I'd be fine with that.
I still want to talk to them. I don't know what the timing will be, if it has to be, some of it has to be there, and if it's introduced.
Well, the money is there. The question is, I think they were thinking it had to be budgeted. The money just
Yes.
had to be there.
Yeah.
I know if it doesn't, that's why I want to ask and
Yeah.
just get clarified. Does it have to be in an account?
It is an account.
Yeah, so
Not if we're not going to budget.
when they were in here
Yeah,
talking about that
It's
rule
just
that
about
they,
you allocate spending it or not. And if you
Yeah.
don't and they need it, the money is there. So we can just do an additional and then we allocate it.
Sometimes you have to prove to the state
Yeah, that,
that it's in a line item.
It
Like, I know
has to
when they did
be
fuel tanks out
budgeted.
there, I had to send that we had 300,000 or whatever it was in a line item. You can't just say we have it in, and he's thinking bank account. Yes, we have it in the fund in the bank account, but some of the state entities you have to prove, especially if it's a matching grant, a lot of times you have to prove you have it allocated. So yes, council has already said we allocate 300,000 towards this project. But I don't know.
yeah, how much?
that's why I want.
So we just need to.
So my suggestion to him was like, hey, you guys had I think it was about a $4 million budget last year. You spent about $2 million. you know, let's not get real tight here, but maybe we could cut $1 million off of that, you know, and say, what do you 80% chance think is going to happen next year? You know, take your best real guess, not a, if everything lines up exactly right, all these things, you know, give us a real one and then leave some room for cushion like that.
I think Nate said at the last commissioners meeting, or one before that, whatever it was, regarding the community crossings grant, it's an 80-20 match, and he said they had to see in that line item, the 20% is there, or you don't get awarded that one. So there are some that you would have to have that, and you might want to depend on the engineer, highway department, whatever, on which ones those are. So,
Well, couldn't it also be done though, that if you know you're gonna apply for X grant over here, and you know that that's gotta happen and it's not, you could do the additional then, couldn't you? Before you actually
well,
apply?
this one grant that Nate was just talking about here, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve and Stan, he came in and said it was unexpected.
Right.
He didn't even know it was coming.
That's kind of irrelevant though to what I'm saying is, and that actually points out that honestly, if it's something we don't know and it just shows up, we're gonna do an additional to have it there, right?
No, you'd already have to have it
The
there.
20%, they want to see that it's already in the line item and not an additional done on it, and not everyone is going to be that way. But some of the state entities, like Bree was saying, we have to literally send them the proof that it's sitting in a line item, or they say, no, you're not getting it.
Yeah,
But
and
not all of them are that way.
my guess is the stars have to really line up if we can't have another meeting before they have to submit it, you know, and if that did happen, still leave extra in there. If your first half of the year, they haven't spent it, so the line item is still going to be there. So I think there'd be lots of
And I
room.
think Becky, Brad, and Nate can all have these discussions and figure out
A little more realistic.
which, you know, what are we looking at here? And then discuss it amongst themselves, and if you want them to come that day or at some point before budget to answer to all that, then you'd have more of an idea.
Sounds good to me.
Well, is that completing our discussion?
I think so, unless anybody has anything else. I do know when we do all of this, once the growth quotient comes out and everything else, and
It's 4%. We know it.
I think it's gonna be 4. I don't know if it'll be 5, but I think it's gonna be 4.
The legislator did that extra cap this year, so the formula would have produced a lot higher. But they did that 1 year cap at 4, so it'll be 4.
I just haven't heard it yet, but the talks on how to see a change in some of this in the future, we have contacts now to do that, but they did tell me government does not move quick. Government moves very slow because there's a lot of people you have to convince. But conversations are, starting. So.
So do we need an adjournment then, or are we just?
I don't think we technically do because it was just a work session. I mean, it's not gonna, all I have in the minutes is that that joint work session was held, so